We are analyzing Little Nightmares 1 and 2 top to bottom today, from how they work behind the scenes and off camera, to what can be found out of bounds, and even what happens when we try to break the game by forcing it to do things it isn't supposed to do. We'll find some stuff left over by the game developers too. This will be a one-stop shop for all things mainline Little Nightmares, before Tarsier Studios moved on to Reanimal. Along the way, you'll get brief recaps of each section to help remind you of things you may have forgotten, given this will be quite the deep dive. As such, you'll also find timestamps for each part. So please enjoy the culmination of all the time I spent breaking these two iconic horror games. Little Nightmares is up first. So being a puzzle adventure game, we play as a little girl named Six. We must escape the Maw, which is a gigantic underwater vessel, full of monstrous-like characters, whom we'll be taking a closer look at. With Six being small and frail though, as a player, we're unable to defend ourselves, being potentially vulnerable to some very gruesome deaths. However, the player is able to run, jump, push, and climb various obstacles. Now with that said, Little Nightmares starts off with a dream Six is having. We awake from it and traverse through various rooms in our effort to escape. Rooms with tragic scenes, as you can see. We make friends with gnomes along the way, and of course we have our hands full with the janitor in this section of the game, which involves some hide and seek skills and a little bit of wit. But without further delay, let's jump in. So in the main menu, we can toggle our view to allow for better visibility and to break away from the traditional camera. This lets us take a closer look at the background, where we can see Six not creating the fire, but manipulating it. If we zoom out, we can see that there's not much more to the vessel. But as we start up a new game, we're greeted with this brief cutscene involving the lady. The scene shows the lady with her back to us in a distant haze. She eventually turns around slowly, looking at the player. This is the moment where Six abruptly wakes up from this dream. We then gain control of Six and can begin our adventure. But if we toggle our view once again, we'll see just how close the transition between the dream and waking up was. Going to the left of our starting point, we can find the area where the cutscene took place. The lady can be found hunched over in this swirling smoke, as her movement is in an endless loop. I will say it was pretty neat to be this close to the lady without the fear of having the life sucked out of me. If I'm being honest though, she's still terrifying. Moving forward though, we come across a room that has some chairs hanging from the ceiling. As we make our way through this room, we can see in the back that some entity walks past the door in the background, instilling the fear that the door just may open. Most players will know that the door never opens, but if we take a look behind this door to see the individual that's lurking back here, it looks like a mummy potato. No legs and no arms. I definitely had a good laugh when seeing this. Who'd have known that it was just a levitating potato that menacingly stares at the player? Although, it's probably fair to speculate that this potato is actually meant to be the janitor, whom we will be encountering through this section of the game. In the next room is a very chilling scene. It's mostly an empty room, where we can see a pair of legs and feet hanging above a chair. Like I said, chilling. We normally can't look up high enough to see this individual's face, but if we break that barrier, we can see that this hanging man has no head. Obviously, this makes sense, given the fact that we can never actually see this. As we progress though, Six enters a longer room where there is a refrigerator towards the end of it. Normally, when we open the fridge, it causes a gnome to come running out from behind it, exiting off screen. While I was exploring off camera, I noticed a gnome standing on a platform off in the distance. From what I can see, as soon as I open the fridge, this gnome on the platform teleports. So there are technically two separate gnomes. This technique, with having the gnomes on these platforms, is used quite frequently throughout the game, as it is less taxing to spawn all your assets in when the map loads versus making something appear. But as we carry on and say goodbye to our gnome friend, we encounter another gnome that sort of baits us into a trap. Six breaks through the floor and finds herself surrounded by both living and dead leeches. So I wanted to see if we could bypass breaking through the floor and possibly progressing forward. But unfortunately, we are met with a dead end. As we navigate further into the mall though, we get our first glimpse of the janitor. Normally, we enter this area and the camera moves outward, allowing us to look up and see him. He appears to be dragging a cage as he crosses this bridge. If we go in for a closer look, you can see the cage is empty. Perhaps this is foreshadowing that the cage is for Six. But as he leaves the player's normal view, we can see that he just continues walking, and then disappears shortly after. At least he has reached his final form, which is no longer a potato. Fun fact though, there is collision up here, and we are able to walk around. The eye that normally kills you instantly upon spotting you has no effect up here, which makes sense, seeing as we're not meant to be up here. Just a little further ahead though, I make my way into a room where we need to shut off the power to progress. There's a rat in this room that we end up scaring away. I figured I would try to see where this rat ended up going, like if it possibly went off on this off-screen journey or just simply disappeared. But I never found the rat, and in the midst of looking, I discovered a cabinet that was way down below us, floating in the void. It's right below the playroom, in which we need to rush through, as the power that we just shut off is about to turn back on. It could be a leftover asset that was used in the above room, not sure. Moving on, we get to this bedroom that has multiple children sleeping in it. Looking closer at the children shows that the ones up close do have faces, whereas the other ones have bags over their heads. Peeking in these bags reveals that they're in fact faceless, as there's nothing within. When we proceed forward though, the janitor shows up, and an intense sequence takes place, as we have to sneak around the janitor for safety. If we take a look behind the door as we enter the room, he simply appears right behind the door. But instead of sneaking through the room, I decided to go through the door he came from. I had a bit of fun teasing the janitor by alerting him of my presence behind the door. The janitor appears confused as he knows I'm not supposed to be back here. He did eventually set off on his usual path, but then surprised me as he attempted to clip through the door to get me. It gave me a mini jump scare and definitely caught me off guard. Immediately after this room is where 6 begins to display some intense hunger pains. We then encounter a boy that's sitting in a cafeteria all by himself. He sees that 6 is hungry and generously throws her some bread. In my first playthrough of this game, I really wanted to try to help this boy, given his kindness and sad appearance. But this time, I'm able to gain access to the cafeteria that he's in. As you can see though, the boy continues to be miserable, regardless of our presence. But this whole room has collision, which allows us to walk around in it. I was hoping the door in here possibly had something interesting behind it, but to no surprise, it did not. Unfortunately though, we need to move on and leave this poor soul behind. We encounter similar instances where gnomes can be found out on these platforms as they wait to be activated by the player. But it isn't until the end of the section that we run into the janitor once again. It's during this part that 6, yet again, starts to experience hunger pains. As we go down to this room, we can see a piece of meat laying inside of this cage. So of course, we go straight for the meat and chow down. If we look up during this, it's hard to see, but we can see Dark 6. Dark 6 appears briefly whenever 6 feeds. I definitely didn't catch this in my first playthrough, but that's when the janitor's long, lanky arms come out from the shadows and locks us in. Remember that cage that we saw him dragging across the bridge? Well, here it is. Anyways, what we don't see is that prior to him catching us, you see just his arms alone, hidden out of bounds. So as you may have guessed, when the player falls for this trap, we can see these pair of arms activate as they come down to lock us in. I almost feel this is creepier than if it were his full body. Regardless though, it makes for a funny sight. It's at this time that we wake in a cage while we helplessly watch the janitor drag another victim away. Off screen, they just simply disappear, but it's this next area that I found to be interesting. So this next encounter with the janitor involves us sneaking by him as he continuously wraps up children and places them on these hooks that take them off screen. It's definitely an anxiety-inducing situation, but let's take a closer look at the work he's doing. We can see that once he places a child on the table, they begin to slide towards the back of it. Eventually, they clip through the wall and go further back out of bounds. I noticed that the child out of bounds goes into a fetal position as the janitor begins to lift the wrapped body to the hook. It's only until the janitor reaches into the cage for another child that we see the one out of bounds disappear and reappear in the hand of the janitor yet again. So essentially he's wrapping up the same kid over and over and over. Talk about the role of a lifetime. But after escaping the janitor once again, we make our way through a series of vents, make a friend, and then find ourselves in this room filled with shoes. For as simple as this part is, it still gives me just as much anxiety as any other creature in this game. In this room, we must evade a creature lurking under the shoes. It's pretty terrifying as this explosion of shoes chases you down. Unfortunately, even with taking a closer look, we can see that there is nothing under the shoes. But I thought it was pretty cool that we were able to see what happens to 6 when this shoe monster, as we call it, kills her. She just sort of helplessly floats in the void, left to ponder on how she got in this position to begin with. There is one other thing I noticed during this part, and it was far out of bounds from where we were. If we get a closer look, we see that it's one of the children that is floating in the void. Very far out, might I add. The weird thing with this is that I died a few times at this part and kept seeing this floating boy, but then he just disappeared after one of my deaths. I'm not sure exactly what was causing him to be there, and he just vanished. But I unfortunately could not get him to spawn again. After evading this invisible shoe monster, we're immediately pursued by the janitor yet again. He just simply never gives up. At this part, we enter a long hallway as the janitor lowers from the ceiling, initiating a chase. If we go up and out of the level, we can see the janitor waiting for us to activate him. He doesn't look too comfortable up here, which could explain why he's so angry. But we do eventually evade him in the elevator as he gets distracted with some gnomes that scatter about. After he runs out of sight, we can see him walking into the next room that hasn't fully loaded, due to the player being out of range. This brings us to the next interaction with him, and I gotta say, nothing much is going on here off screen. Although, once we evade him at this part, he walks to a door and leaves the room. Here, we can see he enters this closet-sized room and briefly contemplates on his life choices, right before disappearing. Carrying on, the next interesting section is where we are traveling through this small path and end up getting ambushed by the janitor. His hands come reaching through the walls, and you have time to escape as he's reaching for you. However, going back here with the camera shows not only one janitor, but two. It's pretty funny looking, as the arms they aren't using appear to possibly be broken. I managed to get back here and found out the hard way that those hands are very much active. Rest in peace. After this though, we have our final encounter with the janitor as he chases us into this small room. Here, we have to evade his hands and attempt to pull the cage apart that's holding the door open. After some dancing around with these hands, the player breaks the cage, chopping off the janitor's arms in the process. Unfortunately, as we do this, beyond our normal scope, the janitor simply disappears. This makes sense, of course, but one could say we still get the satisfaction of watching the janitor as we delete him from existence. But this concludes our out-of-bounds journey through Little Nightmares in the janitor area. Next up, we have the twin chef area. After escaping the janitor's grasp, we are introduced to a new set of baddies, the twin chefs and their kitchen area. So, we'll be taking a closer look at the conveyor ride in, a sausage machine that isn't doing exactly what you think it is, the chef's various kitchens, bedroom, and all the way to where we make our escape. We got some ground to cover, so let's jump in. So starting off, we find ourselves in a ventilation shaft. We just got done escaping the clutches of the janitor, but what follows is the part where we have to jump and grab onto a hook as we cross this giant space. You can see one of the chefs in the background. He eventually leaves our sight as he goes through a door. Taking a closer look, I figured the chef would disappear after going through the door, sort of like how the janitor does in the previous section. But instead, we can see that he walks in place indefinitely. I tried to get 6 up here before the chef walks away, but quickly realized both the surface the chef is standing on and the wooden platform have 0 collision. However, I was able to find collision on the other side of the doors, allowing me to walk in this area. Being in here with the chef doesn't faze the chef, which makes sense as he simply ignores us as he continues to get his workout in. Nothing else is up here from what I could tell. Although, something else I noticed is that the hooks with and without body bags are possibly being reused, as you can see them disappear and reappear. So I was wondering, what would happen to 6 if we remained on the hook while it cycles back to the front? Normally, if you hang onto the hook, a device connected to the rail shakes you off. However, if we bypass this device and hang onto the hook as it disappears, well, at first I couldn't locate 6, but eventually I saw a yellow dot in the distance. So I rushed over to it and indeed found 6, whom appears to be in great pain. Turns out that hanging onto the hook caused 6 to get permanently stuck underneath the map, as she still appears to be holding onto the hook. Her body is also being contorted, while she continuously shakes. I attempted to free her from this state without reloading the game, but was unable to do so. One could say she is stuck in a little nightmare. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Anyways, pushing forward, we can see 6 is still experiencing hunger pains. That's when we see a helpless rat that just got caught in a trap. Since she's starving to death, of course, 6 starts chowing down on the rat, and to the right, Dark 6 appears once again. I mentioned this before in the janitor area, but Dark 6 is this shadow-like entity that appears whenever 6 eats any type of meat. We can get a better look at Dark 6, as she creepily stares 6 down. This doesn't last that long, and she disappears right as we're finishing this rat sandwich. Moving on, we approach the section where we formally meet the first twin chef. As you can see, he's just as disgusting as he is in our normal view, but there really isn't much going on off-screen in this area. I did manage to have some fun with the chef though. So, if we bypass the point of activating him, he just continuously sharpens his knife. We can even get up on the table and stare at him face to face. 6 is even able to ride the knife. Well, sorta. I even tried dancing in the pot of boiling water in the background, and he never flinched. Once he's been set into motion though, I noticed that he would grab this sausage link and drop into the boiling water behind him. If we stay back and let him wander, he'll continuously do this, as he unknowingly grabs the same exact sausage link over and over again. So I make my way to the bigger part of the kitchen after bypassing the chef and acquire a sausage as a parting gift. However, to my surprise, the chef activates and, well, wait, he's not going for me. I'm not entirely sure how this happened, but I managed to make friends with the chef. I just followed him around like I was his assistant, all while preparing this feast for their guests. That we'll definitely be meeting later on in the game. Let's get back on track though. So normally the player evades the chef as we make our way up into the ceiling area and out of the kitchen. This next area is where Six must sneak into the twins' chef room and retrieve a key that she needs in order to progress. During this process, we end up encountering the other twin chef as we wake him while trying to get the key. Although, if we decide to let him sleep and take a closer look, we can see his mask is all bunched up. I went in for a closer look, only to find out that he just has a fat neck, with a tongue hanging out of it for a head. It was definitely weird looking, but also kind of expected, as the chefs are never unmasked during normal gameplay, although we can catch them occasionally lifting their mask slightly as they have an itch. If we make our way out of here with the key and down the elevator, we end up right back where we were before. That's when I noticed another gnome platform in the distance, and realized it's the gnome that we end up freeing from this jar. I had mentioned this previously, but we will commonly run to these platforms where gnomes are stored off screen. Anyways, let's move forward though and get out of this kitchen. The next area involves going into a freezer room and setting up various pieces of ham to be dropped into this sausage machine. We then go back down and use the machine to create a few sausage links and swing into the next area. Breaking off camera, we can see a platform in front of this room with leftover developer text saying, quote, "where hams get teleported upon completion," end quote. So basically what's happening here is every time a ham goes through the machine to make sausage links, the ham is teleported to this platform. Once I got all 3 hams through the machine, I got a very cruel idea and decided to take the gnome that's in this room and try putting it in the machine. I wanted to see if it would possibly teleport him to the platform where the hams go, but unfortunately that isn't the case. At least we could say the gnome wasn't harmed while attempting this. As we continue on, we run into another one of the chefs as he comes down this elevator. We can see that he just materializes in the elevator when we pull the lever, but at this part we normally hide, as we wait for an opening to flee from the area. During this, the chef shakes a crate we're hiding under and pockets some cheese. If we look at this from another angle, you can see the cheese is actually floating behind the box. We also can see that once he pockets the cheese, it immediately goes underground and reemerges, going right back to where it originally was. If we just keep sitting here, the chef will repeatedly keep taking this cheese, making it seem like he has a bottomless pocket. At this point, we're tasked with some more sneaking around, and we find that there isn't much going on off camera throughout this area. So we obtain the key, access another kitchen, outsmart the chefs, and escape this terrible place. Or so we thought. Normally, the chefs continue to aggressively chase Six down, and it's towards the end of this chase that we end up narrowly escaping, as we ride safely away on this conveyor line of hooks. So rather than doing that, I want to see if he'd still chase me while going back the way we came. The answer to this is definitely yes. When the chef is in this chasing state, he's fully determined. So much so that if we rip Six out of the level and just let her fall into the abyss, the chef, in a way, follows. The world unloads and he begins to fall as this pursuit continues. I followed them as they fell for well over 5 minutes. At one point, we can even see the chef doing a grab animation, as if he captured Six. You can see the loading icon appear, as if he actually succeeded with capturing us. Another thing I tried was bypassing the other chef and continuing forward on the hook. I was thinking the same thing would happen again, like when we tried this earlier in the game. Sadly though, this kills Six and loads us back to the checkpoint. I then checked out what the other chef does after going through the door. He of course just disappears shortly after entering it. At this point though, we make it out of the chef's domain in one piece. However, I couldn't resist and decided to go back to see if they would reinitiate a chase with me after successfully evading them. As you can see, they don't have the slightest idea that I'm here, as they continue to squeal in frustration, making for a funny sight. Now it's time to move onward to the guest area and the ending of the game. We start off this section by running down this giant pipe, as we can hear seagulls in the distance. You then see in the background a bridge that leads to a very bright opening. After Six climbs this ladder, she finds herself outside this gigantic water vessel. It's quite the sight. I've always enjoyed the scenery during this portion of the game. However, there's a boat in the background that is unloading an endless amount of very large individuals. So if we stop here and take a closer look, you'll see that these guests, as they're called, are generating from within this boat. This appears to be just an endless conga line of very hungry guests. Something else to note about these big baddies is that you'll see that there are only so many of them that you'll encounter before noticing duplicates. Some wear masks, whereas others just appear to be old and homely. It is interesting to wonder what their lives are like outside the game's story. Is this just the ultimate buffet vacation? Food for thought? Anyways, panning out, you can see the water goes fairly far, making for a giant body of water. Looking behind the Maw shows a layout of our previous endeavors, but bringing 6 over to these guests does not faze them, as they continue on their merry way. No matter what I tried, they paid no mind to me. With normally not being able to come over here, their disregard makes sense. So I decided to walk down towards their ship from where they were unloading. I was surprised to see that there was collision that allowed me to walk all the way down to this ship. However, right as I made my entry, I found myself falling to my everlasting doom. After escaping this endless fall, I tried to see if I could follow the guest into the Maw. Unfortunately, due to the level unloading based on my camera angle, I was unable to explore this the way I wanted. Let's move on to the next section though. In here, we find ourselves much closer to these starving beasts. Immediately going off camera reveals the guests generating as they go up these stairs, similar to how they unloaded from the vessel. During this part, we're normally tasked with finding our way into the next area the guests are going to. The lady can be seen observing her customers as we progress. I decided to join her on this balcony and try to hide under her kimono. I traveled up to this hollow shell of a lady and found myself in her head. The view in here is, well, definitely strange. At one point I felt like I was playing as a lady as I watched my guests make their way in. Going down to the guests in person shows that they still pay no mind to our presence. I'm even able to walk into the next area with them, where we normally find ourselves jumping across light fixtures. The guests split their path in this room, where we can find them simply disappearing, shortly after leaving the view of normal gameplay. In this next room, we'll see the silhouette of a couple guests in the background. So I took a peek back here and found lower poly versions of the guests that were floating, as they scarfed down gulps of air. It should be noted that a lot of the background feasting will be going on throughout this section of the game. Moving on though, we encounter our first aggressive guest, as he throws a table and charges at us. If you haven't guessed already, they eat you if they catch you. So I wanted to see what this looks like up close. We can see 6 does a quick movement into the guest, but then just helplessly floats within the belly of the beast. However, evading this baddie is fairly simple, and we can move on. We avoid another guest as we climb these plates and swing over her. It's pretty fun to look back at her after clearing this part, as she still tries her hardest to reach for 6. This next room doesn't really have anything going on off screen, although I put the camera on some of these guests' heads to observe their endless eating animations. It's fair to say the guests are bottomless pits with their nightmarish appetites. After narrowly evading the guests, we run by one that initiates a chase, forcing us to leap to a light fixture and swing to safety. I went to look back at this fella and found another guest behind him and was, well, you'll just have to use your imagination for this one. Looking down shows a previous room we were in before and reveals that this poor lady is still trying to reach for us. Like, just eat your food, Tina! This next room is a rather large dining hall where you can see many of the guests chowing down. Normally, you're met by this handsome fella and get chased back from where you came from. We then hop over the doofus and run for our lives as we slide to safety. But instead, I join the feast. They once again do not mind my presence. You'll notice I'm able to clip right through them. I jumped down and ran towards the back in an effort to go up these stairs. As you can see, 6 just clips right through them as well, leaving me with not much else to do back here. Moving forward, we end up getting chased by one of the chefs into a bathroom. Successfully hiding causes the chef to retreat and lock us in. I then followed him off camera, only to find him stop right in front of the elevator. He'll stand there in a puzzled state until we progress, which involves breaking this mirror and climbing up and out of the bathroom. When doing this, the chef will blink into this background room. Normally, we only ever see his silhouette, but going in here shows the chef chopping, well, almost chopping what appears to be ham. Coming here with 6 feels unsettling, but luckily no danger is presented by the chef as he continues chopping away. Imagine if you were to sneak up behind him and light him on fire. I know, this thought process concerns me too. Moving on though, we go down the elevator, which takes us to the next horrifying chase sequence. 6 needs to run through this section without stopping, as guests start pouring out of the back rooms and give chase. It truly was panic-inducing when playing this part of the game for the first time. However, looking back here at the guests before they chase us makes for a funny sight. They lie all over each other as they wait for the player to activate them. While looking around, I noticed one of the guests above the map just hanging out by herself. I wasn't sure why she was here, but once I began the chase sequence, I realized that this guest's purpose is to drop down and block any chance of going back. So moving forward, as you can see, I tried doing this chase while still off camera. I managed to navigate through it successfully and eventually made it to safety. Going back and looking at the guests after they failed is funny, as they clipped through one another and tried to form a guest centipede. Sorry. Anyways, now to my least favorite part. This is where 6 starts having hunger pains once again. We find a gnome that appears to be kindly offering some food to us. If you're not new to the game, then you'll know that 6 decides that the gnome is on the menu and not its gift, as she devours the gnome. Despite the sadness this scene brings us, Dark 6 appears to be pleased. Moving on follows with the lady who is taking the elevator. I rushed over to see if she actually goes anywhere, only to see that she simply disappears. After taking the elevator, we progress to the lady's personal quarters. At the start, there's nothing really going on off camera. Normally, 6 has to go upstairs and sneak past the lady to progress. She indefinitely stands here until you move on to the next room, as she awaits her cue, which involves us, the player, knocking this vase over. After doing this, we can see that she vanished, which is exactly what her model does if we watch off camera. Taking the key to the locked door is uneventful, along with the following chase sequence we have with the lady. It's quite the horrific chase, but again, as you can see, nothing is happening outside of what we normally would see. This next part is where we find ourselves in this large room, where we end up having a showdown with the lady. Normally, we grab this mirror from the next room over, and we come back to find the lady patiently waiting for us. She poofs into thin air, and then we're supposed to defend ourselves with this mirror as she continuously tries to grab 6. Before doing this, I went out of bounds and saw that there's more to this room than the player would realize. Above it, you can see an unloaded room with text that says, "Debug teleport to end." So I decided to bring 6 up to this room and discovered that it's the same exact room. It appears this room is used for when the lady is defeated, whereas the other room is for the entire fight sequence. Without going out of bounds, the player would never realize that this room is a duplicate for when the lady falls to 6, making it interesting on how this transition takes place. Moving forward, when the player gets near the mirror at the start, that's when the lady appears in the large room. I very quickly realized that there's no way I could defeat her with the game view I was currently using, as you cannot see the spotlight that you need to be in for safety. Taking a closer look at when she kills 6 shows how much contortion she puts 6 through. I couldn't help but notice that the lady was having a bit of a stiff neck situation herself as she destroyed 6. I did get lucky in one instance and guessed where the light was a few times, but in the end I had to change the view back. This fight doesn't really hide much from the player, but I did have fun fighting her as I used different camera angles while doing so. She nearly gets me on one of her attempts, but the light saves me right at the last second. I always enjoyed this fight sequence, which, like most of the game, keeps you on your toes. However, after fending her off a few times, we finally hit her with the almost final blow, breaking the mirror in the process. Dark 6 is of course standing by as we approach the helpless lady. Her mask was blasted off a few moments ago, and as you can see, she looks terrified. Safe to say, she didn't see this sequence of events ever happening, which includes a child draining the life out of her. So after this intense killing by 6, we are loaded into the last section, which involves 6 walking down this huge dining hall. There are guests in this room that are just eating away, but as we progress, the darkness within 6 devours every single guest as we walk by, making for a very brutal sequence. Sadly, nothing more than what we normally see takes place here. After this, a giant door opens that reveals a way outside, as you can hear seagulls in the distance. Taking the camera up here shows an abrupt end, as 6 stops walking and the credits roll. So that concludes the regular playthrough of Little Nightmares, but we're not quite done yet, as there's one more area to check out, and that's the chapter select screen. So we have the 5 sections of the game, including the 3 DLC expansions. Getting closer into the prison shows pretty much what you'd normally see. However, in the Lair, I was able to get a peek at the janitor, only to discover that the janitor's arm abruptly ends. At the end of the arm, we can find a small cube though, and what's interesting is that the material for the janitor is assigned to this cube. So you can see the janitor's textures applied uniformly to this cube, when normally these are mapped to the janitor's model itself, like the arm. The kitchen is another one that doesn't really hide anything from normal view, although getting up close and personal with the chef is still quite horrifying. The guest area has 2 pals just enjoying a meal that we normally don't have a full look at, as the other guests fight for 6. It's the ladies' quarters that I found to be the most interesting though. First off, 6 appears to be manipulating fire, as the lighter is non-existent. However, getting a closer look reveals the lady in an endless animation, where she's looking towards 6, then turns back to her left, where she eventually resets. You can see her mask is locked in place, which allows us to get what probably is the best look at her face that we've had. She appears calm here, but what she doesn't realize is that she's already dead. But that wraps up our Out of Bounds journey through Little Nightmares in the guests area and the ladies' quarters. So now that the main game is done, let's move on to the DLC and its first chapter. Before the DLC starts, let's take a peek at the Depths chapter selection area. Within, we can see the runaway kid on a cupboard as he's stranded in this flooded room. Taking a closer look doesn't reveal much else outside of what we normally see. However, if we take a look within the kid's model, we can find a cube up in his neck. This is similar to a cube we found earlier inside the Janitor, and the texture map material for this character is applied to this cube. So it's kind of neat seeing this in this form still in the game, when normally it's spread over the actual model. With that though, let's talk about the Depths. As always, I'd like to do a very quick recap that will help everyone remember the DLC and where it takes place in the story. So being a puzzle adventure game, initially we play as a little girl named Six in the main story. We must escape the Maw, which is this gigantic water vessel, full of monstrous-like characters. But as the story unfolds with Six, another is taking place deep in the lower levels of the Maw. Hence, the name of the first section in the Secrets of the Maw DLC, the Depths. Here we play as the runaway kid, who also has a strong desire to escape this, well, little nightmare. Playing as the kid, we're unable to defend ourselves, being potentially vulnerable to some intense deaths. But with some quick and keen decision making, we shall hopefully prevail. At the start, we appear in this body of water in which we can swim around in. It doesn't last long though, as this hand rises from the murky water, grabbing the kid and viciously pulling him under. But it was just a dream, as we wake up in a familiar room. Let's go back to that dream though. We're going to brighten things up a bit and take a closer look at this area. If we take a step back, we can see the kid's dream actually takes place above the room he wakes up in. However, let's get a closer look at the owner of this creepy hand. This hand belongs to the Granny. Before starting her attack sequence, she could be found underneath this body of water. Initially, after pausing the game, I found her hand protruding through the floor of the room. This Granny looks like Gollum's long-lost soggy grandma. There's no ring to rule them all down here though. Just Granny doing some stretches before she drowns a kid. Eventually she teleports below our character and then advances on our poor defenseless runaway kid. As he's dragged down, they both disappear, with the area unloading and the kid teleporting down to the room where we wake up. While in this camera mode, I move the camera back to get a wide shot to the entirety of this DLC's first section. And as you can see, we have quite a ways to go throughout this ship. Back in the room we woke up in, you can see children sleeping in other beds that we took a closer look at in a previous endeavor. It appears we're going to be adventuring through some areas that Six also does in the main game. Heading out of here, we initiate a chase scene down below us involving another kid and our old friend, the Janitor. This long-armed creep will chase down the child and will corner and grab them. Then he'll walk back from where he came, eventually disappearing off screen. Before the scene begins, we can find the poor child standing by, waiting for his cue to be chased. The thing is, we can also find the same kid flailing in midair within the door the Janitor comes from. However, the Janitor instantly appears right in front of the door as the chase sequence begins. As he chases, we can see his arms get caught up by this cage, causing them to bend in unnatural directions. They do correct themselves shortly after though. When the Janitor grabs the kid that ran, we can see that the model disappears and then reappears in the monster's hand. The model we saw shaking around earlier gets instantly moved to the Janitor's hand and replaces the other one. We can see he's no longer floating over here. Normally, trying to get down here while this chase takes place is futile, as we break every bone in the kid's body. But we can nightcrawler our way down here with teleporting. While doing teleportation and having the game frozen in time, it's a bit trippy looking though. So our character's body is what gets moved, as it's the actual player controller, but the hair doesn't move until the game updates on the next frame. This is because the hair is designed to follow our player model as it's parented to it. So you get this funny model smearing before the game updates. With teleporting down here, you can see I can't interact with the boy that's running. I was hesitant to engage the Janitor at first, but I attempted to be a hero and rescue this kid. Instead, I end up getting grabbed by him with the boy disappearing in the process. Not what I expected, but here we are. In my next attempt, I wait for them to exit through this doorway with a, well, unsurprising result. He winds up and grabs me on the spot, just like before. Because the camera is currently detached, it's preventing the game from reloading after our death, which allows us to remain in this instance to explore. Moving on though, the player can't follow the Janitor, so we have to go down further, where we have to avoid an eye, a form of added security for the Maw. If caught in the light, the victim turns into a statue. As we're avoiding the light, we encounter another child who runs away as soon as we get close. She scurries away with a flashlight as she goes off screen. Teleporting down to her bypasses her action to run away, and she'll remain standing there. We can't interact with her in any way though. Following her with the camera shows that she runs through this entire hall and then through a wall. She enters an unloaded room where she'll continue to run and then she eventually disappears. Going this way reveals more familiar rooms that we've previously encountered as 6, but eventually we catch up to the girl. She makes her escape through this window as we're tasked with finding a way up. By the time we make our way up and out of the window, we can see the girl is well ahead of us as she runs away. However, as she's making her way out of the window, we can find another model of her below, and this one is frozen in place. Once girl number 1 is out of normal view, she disappears, as girl number 2 remains frozen until a character goes through the window. She crawls through this hole, disappearing shortly after. Following this is where we find ourselves taking a trip down this long pipe and into some lovely murky water. From another perspective, we can see that the kid actually doesn't fall and floats right below the opening of the hole up top, and then teleports down below, making it appear as if we fell through the pipe. It's not looking too good for this kid, as the situation worsens. So as we progress, we find a way up on this ledge and then encounter some lovely leeches. They move faster while in water, but as long as your dodging is on point and you're quick about it, you can escape by climbing out of this area. Following this leads us into our next encounter with a granny as we cross this body of water. She spawns in the back left corner once we get near the middle of the room. You can see her spawn in with this different viewpoint as we cross. She looks like she's just really happy to be here in her diver's pose. Slowing it down, we can observe her gracefully swimming towards our character. We can also see that her legs aren't connected to her torso. It actually looks like her whole pelvic area is missing. This doesn't slow her down though. She's hungry. Even without modifying the game, as she grabs me, she never ends up pulling me down. It ends with my character flailing at the surface of the water as it fades to black. This happens a lot, and I'm not sure why that is. However, from here, there's quite a bit of ground that we cover that doesn't have much going on outside of normal gameplay. We clear this pipe filled with leeches and solve a puzzle that involves lowering and raising the water level in order to progress. I did find a lever above this area where we changed the water level. Sadly though, I was unable to control my character properly while off camera, as I blindly walk above here in this default camera view. Regardless, I wouldn't have been able to reach it anyways. Sad face. The next area brings us back into the danger zone with Granny. Normally, you have to jump from one object to the next as you try to avoid this soggy lady's grasp. I ended up trying to confuse the granny by teleporting the kid down under the water, where he can in fact breathe, by the way. This makes sense, as we're never meant to be down here to begin with. Joke's on me though, because she starts to sink and clip through the floor and then teleports below me, as she... oh, never mind, she doesn't see me. Wait a minute, I think she's caught on, and I'm dead. But because the game's camera is still dislodged, the game keeps going, resulting with, well, the granny continuing her swimming as she flails the kid around like a puppet on strings. It was pretty hilarious to see this take place. As you can see, I just let the game keep running while she continuously tortures our poor runaway kid. After respawning, I teleport to the following area where we continue our journey evading this grandma. While pulling up this bag of bodies, we can see some resistance while we are pulling, as if Granny is trying to pull it back down. Pausing it while this struggle occurs, and taking a closer look reveals she's nowhere near this bag during this struggle. But after leaping to the next area, we now have to feed Granny. With this part, feeding her allows us the time we need to swim safely out of this area. When throwing meat into the water, we can see her sink and then teleport underneath her meal. She'll take one nice bite out of it and then sorta just zones out, eventually entering back into her hunting mode. The meat vanishes when she's done, and then comes back out of this pipe as you can see, essentially reusing this meat over and over. After clearing this, I found a shoe and threw it in the water to see if Granny would interact with it. However, the shoe does not interest her as she continues to swim about. Moving on, as we climb up here and jump up to this door, it leads us into another flooded room that needs to be drained. Pulling this lever will do just that, followed by the player needing to break this jar on the table. Breaking it reveals the key we need in order to progress. Oh yeah, there's a leech in there too. Taking a peek inside shows these two are not actually in the jar prior to breaking. It's only when the jar breaks open that the leech and key spawn in. But now we can unlock this door and carry on. So we make our way to another puzzle that involves trying to get across this water without getting electrocuted. Sadly, nothing outside of normal gameplay really occurs here. So we move on, but not without nearly getting electrocuted again. Talk about cutting it close. This leads us to a creepy shower that has this eerie looking hole in the middle of it. My first time playing through this, I kept my distance from this black hole, but if you do decide to jump into this hole, it leads to death. Getting a better look at this hole though shows that it's not really that deep. However, when the player jumps in the hole, they clip through the visible ground and fall out of the room. We can see a random leech on our way down, but as you can see, because I'm in this camera mode, we continuously fall forever, eventually becoming a speck in this great abyss. Upon leaving the showers, we get a brief look at Granny, as she sinks into the water upon our arrival. If we don't enter this next section, she will remain in that same position until we enter. I'm beginning to realize how scary it would be to encounter her outside the water. She's one tall lady. While a character is on objects in the water, Granny will hit the object in an attempt to knock us off our feet. Watching this from below shows just that, as she swims up and uses her flabby muscles to hit the suitcase. End result, I die. But the fact that we never see her eat the kid convinces me that she just needs a friend. I mean, look how well they get along. Moving forward, this flooded section works similarly to the previous ones, as we continue to evade Granny. After reaching a safe spot, we once again have to solve a puzzle that involves finding a lever and correctly positioning this suitcase. The lever winds back as the door begins to shut, so if you're not quick enough, the door could easily crush you. However, after completing our task and successfully getting out of here, we find ourselves nearing the end of this first section, which will also be our last encounter with the Granny. When we enter this room, we push this door down and we can see Granny in a chair. She immediately slithers into the water upon our arrival. Taking a look at her while she's sitting in this chair is pretty funny. You'd imagine she's resting and perhaps her eyes will be closed, but no, she's just sitting here all wired up, anxiously waiting for us to show up. As she was slowly but surely entering the water, I was surprised to see that there was another Granny down there. The second Granny spawns right underneath the other as she sinks into this frozen position, while the other Granny pursues us. This other one's hand is stretched out, along with her legs and feet appearing to be twisted around a bunch. Her other hand is also deformed. At a quick glance, I thought she had a pot belly too, but it's clearly just the angle of her model that makes it appear this way. A duplicate version of the door we pushed into the water sits at the base of this room as well. This door probably gets swapped out like the other models we've been seeing. Anyways, we're yet again tasked with trying to cross this water safely. When we get to this buoy, it slowly starts to sink as if Granny is pulling it down. In a similar fashion, like the bags we were trying to pull up a little bit ago, Granny is actually not interacting with this buoy. Moving on and successfully evading Granny leads us to this final showdown with her. Once we make it to this area and climb up to this spot, we then need to pull this lever, which turns on the power. This follows with us then swinging over to this balcony, where we then pull another lever, raising the water level. Doing this upsets Granny, and she reacts by tearing the balcony down. If we wait to pull this lever and look underwater, we can find Granny with her arms stretched out, patiently waiting for a cue to strike. As I was taking a look at this, to my surprise, another Granny emerges, as she clips through the black floor. But wait, there's more! Following this sequence of events, after this balcony breaks, we need to make our way over to this other balcony that has a TV on it. While doing all of this, we can see Granny viciously trying to stop us, as she makes multiple attempts to tear down this platform. If we go back underwater and continue exploring, it's revealed that there aren't just 2 Grannies in play, but there's actually 4 Grannies. Well, 5, including this one under the floor, but it's these 2 that grab my attention. Reason being is that we can see these Grannies rocking out like there's no tomorrow, as they're throwing up the rock and roll hand signs. I guess she knows she's about to go out with a bang. So we push the TV into the water. Watching the TV electrocute Granny is kinda brutal, so I slowed down the speed of the game to get a better look. Unfortunately, I killed the kid in the process though. But clearly it's too much for Granny, who eventually explodes off the balcony pole and slowly plummets to the floor. She partially clips to the ground, making for a creepy, watery grave. Rest in peace, Grandma. Oh yeah, we're dead too. After restarting, I decided to check before I complete this area what would happen if I teleported the kid to the TV platform and pushed the TV off the edge. This will be taking place before the power is turned on, not to mention the water being raised as well. The end result is that everything occurs nearly all at once as soon as that TV hits the water. Dead Granny proceeds to be electrocuted as this Granny on the far left begins pulling down the balcony. The water is rising as all this takes place too, which probably explains why I found Granny all contorted from when she was electrocuted. It's kinda neat to see all this transpire from a sequence break. So we restart one last time and successfully complete this section to move on. This very next room is where we begin our climb, as we take these stairs followed by this long ladder. This eventually leads us into this room, where we're immediately greeted by the janitor, as he reaches out with his long, dangly arms and grabs us. The screen then cuts to black. Checking this out from a different view reveals that it is in fact just his arms and hands we're being captured by. These arms will just wait for the player to enter the room and can't be dodged. But if we teleport up here, we can bypass the trigger for the janitor to grab us. This allows us to roam around this room without the fear of being grabbed. There's not much to explore in here though, as these hands are sleeping on the job. The only catch here is now we're locked in this room until we reload the last checkpoint. And with that, this concludes our Out of Bounds journey through the depths section in the Secrets of the Maw DLC. So now let's tackle the Hideaway and Residence chapters. So we just put Granny out of her misery, only to be captured shortly after by the janitor, concluding the depths section. It's here where we'll load in, only to discover that we're locked up in a cage right alongside 6. The camera will pan out while the janitor grabs our cage and drags us off screen, with the screen eventually fading to black. Pausing the game and getting a different view will reveal that the janitor doesn't load in right away during this scene. Immediately becoming sidetracked, I began venturing out of bounds, finding that the previous area was still loaded in. We can see the janitor's lonesome arms just hanging out as they contemplate their life choices. With the previous section still being here, I realized that it's actually after the short cutscene that we end up loading into the next section. However, if we watch this cutscene unfold from this angle, you'll see the janitor simply loads in as he creepily reaches for the kid. Nothing surprising happens here, as the janitor will just continue to drag us onto this empty platform, with the loading screen eventually cutting us off. This follows with a scene where we can see the kid was bagged up as he makes his escape. However, before taking a closer look at that, we can now see that we've loaded into the next section, as I attempt to get a better look at the entirety of this layout. As I was coming back to where we currently are, it took a moment, but I realized that the kid could be found laying on this pile of coal. This is where we land as we break out of the bag and endure a nasty fall. This prompted me to go back up to the bag we initially came out of, and as you can see, there are in fact multiple models of the runaway kid during this scene. Going in for a closer look within this bag reveals an uncomfortable situation. It's the kid, all contorted within here. It's painful to look at as multiple parts of the kid's body are twisted about, including his feet, arms, and hands. His torso seems to be warped, along with the arms clipping through it as well. Watching the kid escape from this view is something like out of an alien movie. The kid bursting out of the bag as a xenomorph would from a human chest. Once he gets out, he falls as he attempts to grab onto this pipe. After losing his grip, he'll continue to fall and break through this board. It's here where we can see the other model of the kid that's on the ground slide to the back of the coal pile, as the other one continues to fall, clipping through the floor. I lost sight of him, but realized that his body ends up teleporting here, where he remains in this fixed falling position, forever lost in the void, never to be seen again. Well, at least this model of him, that is. I'm not entirely sure why the other model of the kid slid back the way he did, because normally, when the camera moves down after the fall, he is found in the center of the coal, as our little gnome friends approach him. It's visibly clear that he's out of place in this instance though. The following section involves running around with these little guys, as we have to interact with them in certain situations, like opening doors for example. We can see gnomes in the background fleeing from the kid, eventually disappearing entirely, as this other one slides into position while in a T-pose. What I found more interesting though was how these particular gnomes make their way through this door as we enter the room. Watching them squeeze through this door from this perspective is goofy looking. The body assumes its position as the head blasts through shortly after, immediately disappearing. There is another gnome that will end up getting stuck in the door, whom we have to assist and pull out. Taking a closer look while this little guy is stuck in the door reveals another gnome that is clipping through the ground. I honestly don't know what it's doing, but it's funny looking. I deleted the floorboards and tried the same with the grid material underneath, but unfortunately, this crashed the game. After reloading the game though, I noticed the gnome on the ground doesn't appear until we grab the gnome stuck in the door. Furthermore, moving the camera reveals a platform labeled with text that states, "is swapped with stuck gnome," where this stuck gnome is waiting to be swapped. Deleting the door shows how the gnome moves from the platform and to the spot, but it's not until we pull the gnome out completely that the swapping of the gnome is complete. As you can see though, this little guy just continuously bounces. It sort of looks like he's tickling himself repeatedly, as his hands continuously open and close. So proceeding onward, a lot of the upcoming area doesn't have much going on off camera and behind the scenes. It involves a lot of freedom being given to these poor little gnomes we come across though. Saving the gnomes is the only way to progress, but it was here where I found an extra staircase underneath the one we actually use, which was interesting. Eventually we get to this giant furnace that will end up turning on, and the gnomes will then begin grabbing coal and throwing it into the furnace continuously. The objective here is to get more gnomes to join our cause, so we can get this contraption running. From this view, we can see this bad boy is pretty big, which would explain the need for so much coal. Moving on, as we're saving these gnomes, we'll see a similar setup with this particular one that is stuck in the coal, as the energetic, bouncy model stands by out of bounds, waiting to swap with this one in the coal. Once doing that, we're then tasked with finding a battery. After, we unintentionally fry one while pulling this lever. It's in the next, very dark room that we come across the good old janitor once again. However, taking away the darkness allows us to see the janitor spawn in, which is still terrifying, but honestly, as long as we tiptoe, we'll be fine. Doing this following section is a tad easier with our nice, brightened view of course, but nothing is really going on out of bounds here. Eventually, we find our way into a room with exactly what we're looking for. Another battery. So, we make our way up, grab the battery, open the door, evade our long-armed friend, and then make a run for it before he catches on. The janitor will try to come after the kid, but clearly can't get through. Watching him retreat after his failed efforts will reveal that he just simply disappears eventually. We're now able to head up to the next area though, where a few more gnomes are in need of freedom. After retrieving these little fellas, I decided to go on another stroll with the camera, and that's when I came across the lady. She's just chilling in this elevator without her mask on. We won't encounter her in this elevator just yet though, as it's a little further into the game, but funnily enough though, we can find her mask down by our feet, which is sort of odd to see overall. After some good old teamwork, the gnomes and I make our way back to the furnace room, as my quest for gnomes continues. So we move across, then make our way up here, and come into this room where we need to jump on the floor until it breaks. Doing this follows with the janitor entering the room from a door in the back. Looking out of bounds shows that he appears once we break the floor, but that's when I spotted something really odd. The janitor's jacket appears to be hung up outside the level. I'm not entirely sure of the purpose for this, but here it is. While I was checking this out, I noticed a monkey that disappeared in my line of sight. That's when I realized that there are objects stored outside the room that correspond with what the janitor picks up and puts down. I even found a decapitated monkey toy way down below the map. In here though, we just need to evade the janitor once again and distract him by turning this on. We can then make our escape while he's distracted. So there's a body on the ground here that's full of rats, and they eventually scurry out. Getting a closer look at it shows that the rats are actually underneath the ground before appearing as if they came out of the body. Mind you, this part is actually normally pretty dark, making it hard to see this transpire to begin with. We can find a minecart out of bounds, which will end up swapping into the room as we lower the cart that's hanging in the middle of the room. Before doing that though, we need to free this little guy by jumping over and over until he hops off the shelf himself. I consider this gnome lucky, seeing as he comes out this fall without a scratch on him. Now we can make our way up here, lower the cart, and move on. Before doing so, we can check this room out with the all-seeing eye. Like security cameras, we're able to use this and observe other areas of the Maw, including areas that involve Six's adventure, which I thought was pretty cool when first playing through this. While checking this area out with the camera, I noticed a lever that is back behind the room we're currently in. Because I must know if it does something when pulling it, I decided to delete the wall, make my way back there, and pull away. Unfortunately, it does nothing. Well, to my knowledge, that is. So I leave disappointed, and I'm now tasked with retrieving a few more gnomes. As you can see, this is where we need to chase them through the coal, and I'll admit, sometimes they can be dodgy. We make quick work of these guys though, as I grab both of them, successfully getting out of this room, and then using teamwork to make the dream work. Eventually this leads back to the big furnace room, where we now have enough gnomes to get this machine running. We can see how this mechanism just generates from down below, but following it up shows how the level isn't fully loaded, as the bins are dumped and disappear. This is because of my player position, but most players will know that we take this ride up and eventually get off, as we don't want to get Toy Story 3'd. Pushing out from here, we begin to realize that there's a lot more gnomes on the ship than we initially thought, as we encounter even more. This leads into this little gnome family gathering. Between the visuals and music, I enjoyed this part. It made you really feel for all the characters in the game. Back behind this room though, we can find some random objects, along with some gnomes just floating about in this area. We can find a few more gnomes in a T-pose floating above the room we're in as well. Moving on eventually leads us to this elevator, which we had seen earlier before. Checking out the lady this time shows that she has her mask on, but we can see that there is still a mask at her feet as well, which I found curious. When the elevator began to move, I noticed that the lady's mask was no longer on her face, and it could be found down below still. Just how many masks does this lady have? The screen fades to black though, as we enter the final portion of the DLC. Starting off, we need to parkour out of this elevator shaft, but if we look within the elevator first, we'll see the lady is nowhere to be found. Taking a look at the entirety of this whole new section we're in shows that we're actually not too far from completing the DLC. However, shortly after getting out of the elevator shaft, we'll come across the lady with her back to us, as she listens to her music box. When I failed to sneak up on her, I had the game running at a slow speed, and as you can see, she proceeded to destroy me. However, if you remember from a previous chapter, if we're messing with the camera as our character dies, it will prevent the game from reloading us to our most recent checkpoint. In result, we'll see the kid fall to the ground as the lady continuously uses her power on her lifeless body. The lady has no remorse, and will do this until we restore our default camera. Anyways, there's a key here we must get once she's gone, so instead of waiting, I tried teleporting to it to see if I could snag it early. This resulted in death once again. So I decided to go full force this time, as I delete her from existence, climb this counter, and grab the key. Entering the next room, we can see we're now alone. These shadow children are going to be the main threat within this section. Progressing through this involves collecting 3 figurines that will end up needing to move forward. During the scavenger hunt is when we have our close encounters with these shadow children. And I gotta say, they are terrifying. Made out of a dark aura, the shadow kids are aggressive, childlike creatures created by the lady to guard her residence in the Maw. They hunger for one thing: our soul. So we must use our flashlight to keep them at bay. Holding the light on these fellows will eventually disintegrate them. There are 3 figurines that we need to collect, and we can actually see all 3 of them sitting out of bounds if we move out from this particular room. These ones floating out here probably function in a similar way to the other models we found earlier, if I had to guess, like the gnome swapping out and whatnot. Once we have all 3, we're able to move on. It's here where we once again run into the lady checking herself out in a mirror. You can see in the reflection that she doesn't quite look the same, as she appears more homely and older. When we try to walk by her, she will see us, as she horrifyingly screams as the lights go out. Checking this out with this particular view mode shows that the reflection of her hasn't loaded in yet. But if we travel down below this area, we'll actually find the model that's used for the reflection in the mirror, which, I couldn't help but start laughing at as I got closer to it. This lady granny hybrid is quite the sight, if I'm gonna be honest. She'll just continue to touch her beautiful face with her gray soggy hands, basically mimicking the movement of the lady above, hence the reflection. This all works out though, as we wouldn't really be able to see that it's the granny's face in normal gameplay, so the developers could just safely reuse this. Rest in peace, Granny, I'll never forget you. It's at this point now that the lady begins pursuing us, so we make a run for it through this creepy dark room. From this view, it's not nearly as scary, but it allows us to see how she skates through objects during this scene, eventually disappearing. As this is happening, we can actually find the lady model that ends up getting us waiting in the upcoming room. So let's not keep her waiting, and evade these other ladies as we make our way to our inevitable demise. Most of you will know that the lady is about to come out of nowhere and turn this into the worst day ever for this kid. The screen will black out, only to reveal that she turned us into a gnome. Watching this unfold through this view is pretty painful to watch. During this, we can see the kid's arms, legs, and head begin to contort into his torso. Talk about a big nightmare. When the screen goes black, that's when the contorted kid is swapped with a gnome, along with the kid's clothes on the ground. The adventure from here takes an even sadder turn, as we realize we have lost our mobility overall. In an effort to escape, I teleported the gnome to this staircase, which in turn leads to a very predictable dead end. Deleting doors to avoid this awful fate that awaits us was also futile, as it leads nowhere. We do encounter a few guests throughout this part, but it's nothing we haven't seen before. They are still just as disgusting as our last encounter with them as 6. This of course follows with the end, as we quickly come to the realization that we are not just any gnome. We are actually the most unlucky gnome in the game. However, the game fades to black as the credits roll. Once the credits are finished, we see a TV in a random room, which basically teases the second Little Nightmares game that was in the works at the time. We can actually find this room by its lonesome down below the level. I ended up bringing the gnome kid in here for his own safety. In this version of the story, I decided that he gets to live and not become a certain someone's dinner. But there you have it. That wraps up Little Nightmares 1 and its DLC chapters. So now let's dive into Little Nightmares 2. Starting off in Chapter 1, we'll find that our point of view is slowly coming into focus as we creepily travel through this narrow hall, which leads to a door. This scene gets intense while we approach the door, but will snap us quickly into the next scene where we find Mono coming too. It's fair to say that we may have just witnessed Mono coming out of this TV. Moving on though, we'll come across some basic obstacles as we make this jump, followed by entering this little underground tunnel we must traverse. This tunnel leads to a horrifying scene where we can see a bunch of larger bodies in a bag dangling from a tree. You can grab on the feet that protrude from the bag, but that's about it. I'd say it's definitely a sign that danger lies ahead, but that's not gonna stop us as we leap forward into this nightmare anyways. There's a trap here that we'll need to avoid as we simply leap over the tripwire to do so. This follows with some exercise as we need to move this box into position so that we can make our way up and progress. Right after this, we have a run for your life moment as this giant log begins to roll down the hill after us. However, staying mobile throughout this interaction allows us to narrowly escape this killer log. A couple of obstacle puzzles follow this that are fairly self-explanatory. It's here though that if we're not paying attention, the player may not realize that we don't need to make this jump, as we can just jump down the side here making our way down. Normally, we just climb up the fallen bridge to progress, but if we continue forward, we can find a path that we can follow down, which leads us to the first glitching remains location. To my understanding, these are the ghosts of lost children, and when interacting with them, it almost looks like we're absorbing them. We're going to be collecting these throughout the game as well, but let's go back to the start now and take a closer look at things and see what we can break down. Back at the start, we have this hallway cutscene we can break away from to reveal a very gloomy outer bounds, as you can see. Changing our view will help us see this long, unloaded wilderness that awaits us in the distance, but I did end up discovering that Mono is not too far from this hallway that the next sequence begins in. Well, initially at least. We can find him in this little isolated area right next to the hallway. He'd just be chillin'. On freezing time, we can see how the hallway scene plays out from this perspective, with this dark fog slowly pushing through the hall. We can see the moment where Mono is sent to, well, where we normally see him in the game for the first time. The first thing I want to try here though, is to see if we can get Mono into this background we normally can't access. An invisible barrier will prevent the player from doing this initially. However, I soon discovered that regardless of this barrier, this still wasn't possible, resulting with death every time. I even at one point accidentally teleported myself in front of the level. At least we know now? This followed with me trying to get Mono into this hallway area from the beginning though. As you can see, I'm able to get him up and in here, but going back to our normal viewpoint shows that it's going to be impossible to navigate, as it can't reach where we're standing. Unglorious! Maybe next time, partner. Seeing the way the world is loaded around us makes it feel small from this perspective, though understandably so. I can only imagine how bogged down the game would be while trying to load in this entire wilderness. Speaking of, we can see as the player progresses through these woods that the level will load in as it follows the player. Checking out this world from this perspective is really neat, and makes me want to play this in first person, but I digress. Moving on, taking a closer look at this bag of bodies was horrifying, but I couldn't do much else with it. I tried getting Mono on top of it, but it just wasn't letting me. Looking within the bag reveals no bodies that may have belonged to the arms and legs either. Out of frustration, I ended up deleting the bag, resulting with flies just flying about in this now big open area. Moving on, I once again tested the limits of Mono, seeing if we could get down into this area that would normally end in death. Turns out we're able to get down here, which was pretty neat, as I ran all about down here. Of course, until I ventured a little too far off, which resulted with my death, as I fell through the map. This tripwire and cage that follows will kill the player if they trip it. However, during my first interaction with it, I decided to instant transmission my way out from under the cage right before it fell. This does allow us to climb on top of the cage, but that's about it. I've got to say though, when it does trap you, it's an intense death, especially when watching it in slow motion. The explosive impact as the cage hits the ground takes our poor friend Mono on a hectic journey, as he hilariously ragdolls about within the cage. If it weren't for all the guts in here, and the obvious fact that he died from this, I'd say it sort of looks fun. But once this death sequence completes, we can see how the game resets everything. Following is the log sequence where we have to run for our life. We can watch this trap on loop if we have Mono sit idle, as you can see. I had the idea of just deleting the log, so I didn't have to worry about it anymore, so I did. This resulted with a confusing, panic-inducing scene, as it felt like this didn't fully work. Yep, that definitely didn't work. The log object is gone, but the trigger for killing the player is still intact. Whoops. Outside of just running, teleporting behind the log proves to be the only other way to avoid it, allowing us to walk this area. We can't really do anything here though, but here we are. Blanking our way into the next area leads us to the drop, where we must climb down and back up to progress. There's another drop in the background, like from before, but I was more interested in this area where the glitching remains were. There's a body down here that was poorly buried, and I was interested to see whose remains lay here in this shallow grave. Turns out that we'll never know, as all that appears to be buried here is a pair of legs. I suppose it makes sense, seeing that we'd normally never see under this grave anyways. Let's carry on through this chapter though. Pushing on, we'll come across some random shoes, which will end up being our key to progressing, because if we instead decide to just carry on, this happens. Once we utilize the shoe and escape this part, we'll come across some traps that we'll want to avoid. Eventually, we'll be introduced to be able to wield items like so. In this case, a stick, which is clamped in this trap. The player will be able to use the stick to set this trap off that's blocking our way, in turn allowing us to progress. This follows with a log slide that spits us into a leafy scene. Before moving forward from this point though, if the player turns back and goes under the mouth of the hollow tree, they'll find the second glitching remain in here, waiting to be gobbled up. There are traps scattered all throughout this leafy area, so we need to use this stick to set them off. Following this, we'll have to do some more clearing of traps, but with pine cones this time. The area ends with this climb up a tree, where we then jump to safety. At this point, we'll find ourselves approaching a big, not so welcoming house. The open window on the porch is where we need to go as we enter this kitchen that probably smells just as it looks. Opening this fridge will give us the What's in the Box achievement, and as we exit this room, if we hang a right and then another right, we'll end up finding the raccoon cap. Heading through this partially open door though, we'll come downstairs to the sound of a chilling tune. Following the music leads us to this person, who I'm sure most of you know the identity to, but this person seems to be a prisoner as they play the music box. We can't get into this room until we find the axe we need to break the door down. Once acquiring it, we will "Here's Johnny" our way into the room as the prisoner cowers in fear under the table. A cutscene will play out as we enter this room though. Mono will kindly extend a helping hand to the individual, but like a stray cat, they flee in fear. Pursuing them, we need to make our way back upstairs as this individual leads us through this terrifying home. Let's just leave this beautiful family to their lovely dinner and get out of this room quickly. There's a locked door in the following room, which Mono and our new friend need to find the key for now. This follows with some team-based obstacles that we need to achieve in order to find the key, along with stealing this lever from this sleepy grandma. And we can now get this key. Before using it and pushing on though, let's go back and take a closer look at everything we just went through. We can take a peek under the map to see how the net is laid out. The net trap sequence is fast, but watching it in slow motion allows us to appreciate the skill of the hunter's traps. Mono never knew what hit him. From this point of view, we can see how the map has been disappearing behind us as we progress. And I gotta say, it gives a slightly uneasy feeling to observe, even though it's to keep the game running smoothly. It almost feels as if we've reached the halfway point of this forest, just by the looks of it. But I digress. Grabbing our stick and clearing the way leads us to the leafy area, where if we once again go under the map, we can observe the traps and how they're laid out. Going under here though, and taking a closer look, we can see this poor rat that has clearly seen better days. Who's to say if this could have been a friend or foe? It's clear that we'll never find out though. I didn't count how many traps are here, but there are quite a few. And on that note, boop, there we go, no more worries. Underneath us at this point, there are some crows floating in the abyss, but I never figured out exactly what they're for. There are crows in this forest area, so perhaps they get swapped out. We've reached the house now though, and you'll see it is only partially loaded in at this point, as it appears as this broken, unfinished house. Once we make our way through this window and into the kitchen, we'll see that a couple more rooms will load in, including this one with the festive family dinner that's taking place. It appears that someone is a fan of taxidermy, as it's, very apparent. It's fair to say it's both a vile and sad situation for someone to go to these lengths to not be alone. Anyway, clearly a serial killer lives here though, which is why we need to get the heck out of here ASAP. Leaving the kitchen, we'll see there's no turning back at this point. As the door shuts, the room itself practically all unloads, leaving behind this broken floor. As soon as we make our way down the basement stairs, you'll see that the entirety of the basement will load in. Zooming out here, we can see a duplicate of the music box floating in front of the map. Once you hit the door with the axe, this non-animated music box is swapped out with the one that was in the room previously. Taking a closer look at this prisoner, we can see that they aren't fully engaged with the music box, which was curious to see. This is where we need to free our new friend though, but instead, I decide to break this sequence. Getting in here without breaking through the door results with no reaction from our friend. We can hold hands with them, and honestly, I was just going to progress this way. I came to realize that there's a trigger for the small cutscene that takes place here, which was right to the entrance of the door. The scene will carry out as normal, minus the fact that our friend is no longer moving. We'll wave to absolutely nothing for it to come out from under the table and eventually get knocked down. Trying to progress after breaking this sequence is, well, not possible. Our friend can't go up these stairs, as you can see, and in result, this door upstairs that's normally open at this point remains closed. This is all because we didn't allow our new friend to scurry off, as they normally run away from us, head upstairs, and make their way into the now open dining room. Zooming out to this point, we can see the entirety of the house is now loaded in though. There's not much else to this house at this point, aside from the grandma that wasn't invited to dinner. She's clearly starving. There's a key we need to get as well, which also has a duplicate of itself floating out just in front of the map. We could avoid all of this and just delete the door with the padlock. However, our friend will not get the memo and will continue to stand by as they wave us over to go up into the attic. Moving on normally, we'll make our way outside. If we hold off from progressing and investigate this outhouse, we'll see that our friend will help us out with opening it. This will result with finding our third glitching remains. Carrying on, we'll be tasked with another teamwork-based obstacle, as we move this large crate into a more favorable position so that we can get through this opening. This leads us into a very panic-inducing scene. We need to sneak by this guy, known as the Hunter. He appears to be tearing away at something, which makes it fair to speculate that he's skinning a creature, given the animal skin hanging all about. Getting out of this room alerts our terrifying friend and initiates a horrific chase sequence that we must survive. All the while, of course, being fired upon with a double-barreled shotgun. We have to use the crates we come across as cover, so we can avoid being blasted by this creep. Reaching this small cave and seeking shelter inside allows us to take a breather, as our hunter friend appears to have lost us. He'll casually walk away as he searches for us in the background. Pushing forward, we obviously want to avoid getting spotted, and this tall grass helps us to do just that. However, we eventually run out of tall grass and have to time our dash just right to make a run for it and dive into this hole. This follows with a little underground stroll, but does eventually lead us back to the surface once again. We'll then come across a team effort obstacle as we extend this bridge a little further, allowing our friend to jump across. In turn, allowing Mono to make this leap as our friend catches us on the other side. It's here where if we climb up these cages that are stacked up in the background, we can then jump over to this hanging cage. Getting on it and jumping a bunch will bring it crashing down, which leads to the discovery of another piece of headgear, the rain hat. Yay! Okay, I'm switching back. Following this is when the hunter comes back into the picture, so we need to avoid getting shot. This leads to us climbing up and into what I believe is a barn? The hunter is hot on our tail though. We'll run through this barn, dodging buckshot, but eventually we'll reach a window to jump out of, resulting with us sliding off the roof and into the water. In a similar fashion as before, we'll hide from the hunter once again. We then sneak around, as we need to avoid getting spotted by the hunter's light, which involves ducking into water and even using our surroundings to create concealment. However, once we clear this area, we'll end up startling some crows, which will initiate the final chase we have with this guy. It eventually leads Mono and his friend into this shed. Our friend will wisely close the door and lock it, as this panic-inducing time sequence occurs. The hunter is breaking in, and we need to pull the shotgun off the wall as quickly as possible. This will result with our friend lifting the gun up in efforts to aim it. Once we help them aim the gun is when the boom occurs, as we destroy the hunter. We can relax now. Let's rewind time though. So coming back to when we get outside with our friend for the first time, as we enter the next structure, we can see the hunter loaded in, tearing away at, well, let's take a closer look. As you can see, the hunter is ripping away at what looks like a large rat. We can even speculate that this may be a whole family he's collected, but he'll just continue to rip the same skin slab over and over. However, it was this overgrown rat's tongue that was freaking me out more than anything. Just look at that thing go. Can't imagine this is an easy job when your point of view is a little hole. This does not stop him from bashing our face in if we decide to get up on his work table. It was pretty funny to consistently do this over and over. It's here where I realized that the ragdoll physics were being affected when I changed the speed of the game. This was occurring back at the cage from before as well. Normally, you'll see how Mono will just fall flat and be out for the count. If we slow it down though, it will result with this overly dramatic knockout, as Mono goes flying. He'll continue to flail through the air for quite a while, granted the game's speed is significantly slower. It's pretty hilarious to see. Let's give Mono a rest with the torture here though and push on. Escaping to the outside will alert the hunter, and as you can see, he'll disappear and reappear as he blinks into the door. This is where we run, but let's take a look under that mask first. It makes sense, but there's no face under this bag of his, as he's just hollow inside. Of course, if we stand our ground at this part, we're in for a horrific death. He'll blast us with his double-barrel shotgun. So sticking around isn't the best idea. If we're not behind cover, this sharpshooter won't miss. You'll see just what I mean as we progress. He'll only ever shoot us and never our friend. A perfect example of this is when I was trying to see what he does as we enter this hole. So I gave myself a head start as I seek shelter underground. Regardless of his position, he'll appear at the mouth of this hole. You'll see our friend was running behind, but like I was saying, the hunter is solely focused on mono. It appears the hunter will take a shot at us in the hole normally, but we can see at the present time this is happening, he doesn't have his gun. A blast occurs as he stomps, and then he slides off into this hillside. I noticed as he was clipping into this terrain that the textures between him and the hillside were beginning to bleed into each other, resulting in this visual. He eventually disappears within this hill though. After the small tunnel crawl is when Mono and his friend need to help each other cross this gap. I tried being the one to catch our friend's hand this time, but they weren't having it, as they just stood there. Moving on, we can see the hunter back here within the terrain preparing to come into play. His legs are crushed up in his body at this part, and when unfreezing the game, we can see this odd display of walking, as his legs quickly adjust and become normal looking. This is because his leg joints are set up with inverse kinematics, which connects his hips to his feet with a chain, essentially. And his feet are trying to adhere to the closest solid surface, but the knees just respond to the feet's position due to the rigging. And you get this funny display. During one of my sessions here, I somehow erased the hunter. I had no idea where he went, and this resulted with the part where we had to climb up the side of this barn being a very chill moment. However, as soon as we climb into the building, he'll appear right outside of it. I managed to get outside here with him during this, and decided to make bad choices, as I began to taunt him. This of course led to my demise, as I ended up getting too close. Ouch. Being down below within the barn doesn't trigger him to chase like when we're up above though, and the camera doesn't fully follow us if we try to progress, as you can see. Once we jump out of the opposite side of this barn, we can see the hunter has vanished. He will end up appearing behind the door as it pushes out on its own, eventually bursting through it. Getting up where the hunter walks is possible, but it's pretty limited with what we can do here without dying. There's no safe way getting by him up here, hence why the water is our best friend in this scene. When evading him successfully, he'll walk out of sight behind us and eventually will stand in place, like so, until we progress further. However, we've reached our final encounter with the hunter, as we make our way into this shed. Teleporting over here sorta bypasses him, but our view is obstructed. I believe this is because I didn't go through the doorway, which initiates the next scene. I verified this after deleting some of the shed so I can see, as I went toward the doorway, triggering the next sequence. The hunter, once again, will vanish and reappear behind the door. The thing about this scene is that you can get out of the shed and even get right up on him, as he ignores you. Death is inevitable though. Regardless of where we try to go during this break-in, as soon as he breaks the door down, it kills us. Deleting the door allows us to watch him more clearly, and if you look at his head during this, it doesn't look quite normal, almost appearing to be made of rubber even. Oh, and when we die here, our friend, goes on quite the adventure. Our partner in crime's body starts going crazy, and it's hilarious to watch. Eventually, they'll find themselves descending down into the abyss, where they'll forever fall until the game resets. But once we grab the shotgun, and the two of us wield it, we can watch as we blast the hunter out of existence. Quite literally. Shooting the hunter ends up deleting him. We can rest easy now, as the threat has been neutralized. Let's push on though. So you should get an achievement once we blow away this hunter, which will follow with this very eerie ride we must make across this large body of water. It's a beautiful transition, if you ask me, as we float along this thick fog. We came from this horrific forest, only to find ourselves approaching a ghostly city. I always thoroughly enjoyed this entire scene, with its creepy looking shoreline. Once on land though, there's a doorway that must be taken to proceed. Over by this TV though is another one of these glitching remains, which should give you an achievement if you've been collecting them up to this point. Heading through the doorway will also give you another achievement, which is for completing the chapter, as the game loads into the next instance. Before we take this door to the water, we can see the body of water isn't fully loaded, as we're nearing the end of this forest background. It curves off right before coming to an end. Let's jump on this door though. As we take off, we can see the world unload behind us, all while we head further into the water. Within this giant gray-looking background, we'll see the city buildings load in, as there's no heavy fog to prevent us from seeing this take place. It's quite the view, if I must say so myself. You can see how the buildings will move a little, which we normally do see, but we can also see how they stack behind one another from this perspective. On this shoreline, we only traverse so far down here before hitting an invisible wall. However, we can bypass this and continue our trip down the shoreline. Luckily, I followed my gut feeling though, as I stopped to bring the camera in on mono. If I would have continued for another few seconds, I would have fell to my death. It was interesting that we can take mono underwater here, which makes for a curious scene. But this is probably because we're out of bounds. Because going in the water within the normal bounds results with, well, death. But with that, we've reached the end of the first chapter of Little Nightmares 2. It's now time to dive into the school in Chapter 2. Now with the hunter out of commission, we'll sail on and pass through this doorway, where Chapter 2 awaits. Entering Chapter 2 from here, we'll find ourselves in a building with a second floor being destroyed, where multiple TVs and a full suit hangs from above. Progressing, we'll have to cross through this alley, which leads us into what appears to be a diner of some sort. You'll see that there are more clothes that appear to be abandoned here, giving off Cell vibes from DBZ. This will follow with one of the first obstacles we must figure out in order to proceed. Our friend will boost us into the next room, where we must then jump up and grab a hold of this rope. This will allow us to swing into the TV that appears to be attached, which in turn will pull us up as we knock it down. Once safely getting up here, we'll then have to come over this way to help our friend get up, like so. Following them from below, we'll see that we're going to have to make a big jump in order to move forward. Not without a little help from our dearest friend though. We'll want to jump across these boards up ahead, but before doing so, if we go this way, we'll find the first glitching remains of this chapter. Now we can go ahead and cross here to push on through. It's here, however, that the player will have their first TV encounter, as this ends up happening in multiple instances throughout the game. The TV's screeching causes Mono to cover his ears, as our movement is hindered while approaching it. Making contact with the TV, we basically need to straighten out the hallway that's being displayed on the screen. Once doing this multiple times, we're sucked into the TV, and we'll find ourselves in this hallway. It's playing in slow motion during this part, as we'll need to run towards the door. This eventually follows with Mono getting ripped right back out of this TV dimension by our friend. At least that's how it appears. Acting as if nothing even happened, we'll push on with our friend and find ourselves at the entrance of the school. Bright-eyed and bushy-tail, if we make our way towards this corner of the playground by the dumpster, we'll find another glitching remain. Also, if we go up these stairs and jump onto this dumpster, we'll find the soccer ball hat to add to our collection. If you're going for achievements, you'll want to equip this hat and then proceed to run through this soccer goalpost, as it'll unlock referee. Advancing, we'll climb up the side of the school and enter through the window. Let's go back now though, and get another perspective of what we just went through. Back at the start of this chapter, we'll find ourselves in this building with the TVs hanging from above. We can get up here and walk around, but there's not much else to it. From this perspective though, we can get a better look at the entirety of this alleyway that we have to cross while advancing. Going in to observe this area, we can see that it goes quite far back, with the skybox floating above at the end. With the drop-off being here, I go ahead and warp over to the other side to check it out with Mono. We can walk around back here, but I did end up finding out that we can clip through the buildings, resulting in my death. Coming back over here though, as you can see, we can run really far back here, to the point where it's fairly difficult to see Mono. Not much else to do back here, other than jumping into the void though. I did, however, notice these little flimsy objects falling through the map and out the bottom of it. I came to realize that these are the clothes we normally see falling in the background while passing through this alley. Let's push on though. I felt this dino needs some investigating, so I popped up on the bar and did just that. I can't disrupt or interact with any of the items on the bar, and you'll actually see that I'm clipping through them as they lack colliders on the objects. Same goes for the shelves on the back wall of the plates. While up here, I was able to jump into this fryer. Luckily, it's not on, but I did end up finding myself falling through the following appliance. I found Mono in the oven as a result. Realizing there's not much else here, I freed myself through the destruction of the bar to escape. There we go. Carrying on, I take a peek behind this door, but then find myself back at this team-based obstacle. So instead of going through it, I just warped to the top and decided to move on, leaving our friend behind. I was curious to see what happens without them. Joke's on me though, because the very next area is this encounter with a TV that we end up inside, and our friend will be making a quick return here. If we break away from Mono during this sequence as we travel into the TV, we'll see down below that our BFF isn't letting us out of their sight. However, from this perspective, we can actually see how this whole TV scene works. Up above, we have these two hallways. This bottom hall is the one we end up actually teleporting to, whereas this shaky one that's above is the hall that we're seeing in the TV while we're touching it. I thought this was pretty cool with how they did this, as you can also see the same TV floating in front of the hopped up hallway. Once escaping the TV though, we can see how Mono and his friend will be instant transmission back down here. Pushing on follows with this grand introduction we have with the school building we're gonna have to go in. Like washing up on the shores of the city, I love the view we get here as we're supposed to proceed, in its beautiful gloominess. Zooming out though, we can see this giant skybox that's in the background, which was a grand sight. While taking all this in, that's when something caught my eye, and I went in for a closer look. After changing the view, I realized there was a pair of shoes hanging from the laces all by the lonesome self. How peculiar. Traveling back into the alleyway that's here is quite similar to the one we explored from before. So let's save time with not taking Mono back there, but rather try to get him on top of the school. I had a feeling this wasn't going to go too far, but after a couple failed attempts, I was able to get Mono up here surprisingly. Peeking under the roof, we can see where we're able to walk, but it's not far, as we'll fall to our death every time. So much for exploring the roof of the school. Unglorious! Getting back into the school though, let's push forward into this chapter. Once in the school, we're going to want to go down this hall and head to the door on the left. Here we can grab this ball that we'll need, but first, let's grab this paper airplane. If we take this glider back to the window where we climbed in from, you'll get another achievement once throwing the plane out the window, which is fly free. Without the ball, you can see there is a portrait with some eye holes that's in the way, but let's use the ball and move on. This leads us into this questionable room that seems to be a dead end. However, jumping on this loose trap door prompts our friend to come join, allowing us to break through. We'll then follow this passage that takes us to this area, where we'll drop down and continue further in as we enter a small ventilation shaft. This leads us deeper into the school, and gives us a brief creepy peek at what's in store for us, as we can see an entity's shadow retract its long neck in the background. The door will shut, and we'll hear whatever's back there creepily walking, as the steps fade away. It's here though that we'll start encountering Home Alone-like traps, as a bucket flies by us. As a matter of fact, we'll see our Kevin McAllister wannabe run away as we push on. We'll encounter more of these traps, as you'll see they're activated by a floorboard. If we go through this first door, we'll be met by, yes, another trap. Ouch. However, heading down this way is the way to go, as we'll want to dodge this locker that drops from the ceiling. This allows us to jump over and into the next area, where if we're once again not careful, or in this case, not distracted by a toy duck, it's our head. Simply ducking will, get it? We have to duck? Sorry. This follows with us continuing our pursuit with these unruly children. However, it turns out that this was more so them leading us into a trap, as they drop a locker on Mono with a small scene playing out. A bunch of these creepy kids will then come out as they surround our friend. They basically abduct our BFF while we're stuck under the locker. Once getting free from the locker, if we try to follow these creeps, we'll see them making their escape through the ceiling, as a ladder pulls them up and out of sight. Let's rewind back to when we entered the school though, and take another look at what we had just endured. Coming back, we had just entered the school, and had to make our way back to this room where the ball is. We can see how they have a backdrop here behind the building, which is solely for these windows. We can see on the outside how there are some spotlights that have been placed in the window, which helps create the look we get when normally entering this room. While checking this out though, I saw a little toy of some sort right outside the room. Getting a closer look, it appears to be this baby man that's holding a pair of arms, as its shoes are stuck in its legs. I'm not sure what to make of this guy, but it's just chilling right outside the room here. With my thorough sweep of the area, I destroyed some of the debris and went back further into this hall. It of course leads to a dead end, but it was worth a shot. Jumping forward to where we see the teacher's shadow, I decided to go in for a closer look. Freezing time, we can see the teacher standing back here with some books and text floating beside her. The text reads, "It's meant to be down here." My best guess about this text is that it was used to remember the position of the teacher when trying to figure out how her shadow would be cast, unless it's for some other object. Anyways, once we activate her, we'll see that she'll retract her neck and then we'll begin to walk, as she disappears shortly after. Once she disappears, we'll still hear her footsteps, in case you were curious. So at this point, I thought it'd be appropriate to check out how the death from the bucket looks in slow motion. If you remember from Chapter 1, when slowing time in the game, it messes with the physics of our character, resulting in some funny death scenes. That is absolutely the case here too, as this bucket sends Mono on one spectacular journey. This whole instance lasts for over a minute, but clearly this ordeal would never take place at normal speed. Breakdancer Raygun doesn't got Jack and our boy Mono. Just look at him go! Anyways, let's talk about those bullies now. These porcelain-like doll children are very hostile and only obey the teacher. We'll see when this creep runs off that he won't make it very far, as he disappears shortly into his run. There's a single building in the background at this part, which is used for the window at the end of this upcoming hall, which has a slightly intimidating vibe going on, if I must say so myself, but these bullies will just patiently wait for us until we approach. When doing so, the first one will run across the hall and into this wall, where he will clip through, eventually disappearing. The other one ducks behind these lockers, where we can see him slide around a bit, before disappearing as well. Hiding in this dead-end room, we can find another bully that's in here, whom I'm assuming set the trap for this room. He just hides in here and remains here indefinitely. Whatever, dude. I didn't want to play with you either. Pushing on, we'll see the one bully that we pursue as he runs away like a Skeletor meme, disappearing shortly after. It's this next part, however, in which our BFF is about to be kidnapped. We can find one of the bullies hiding within the walls, waiting for the locker to be dropped on Mono. We can also see the bullies with the ladder are already loaded in as well. When the locker drops down on Mono, you see how he'll vanish once inside. Meanwhile, our friend is clearly in trouble. Watching this play out as we're trapped sucks, but if we watch them drag our friend off screen, we'll see that all of them will disappear one by one. Mana will reappear within the locker though, as he'll make his way out of it. When trying to reload this scene, I'm not sure what I did, but I think I broke the sequence. After loading in, the locker falls towards us and will delete Mono, despite his position. I don't think this is supposed to happen. Something else I noticed is that the bullies are now abducting an imaginary friend, as you can clearly not see our friend. Where'd they go? Warping over to where they took our friend, I skipped over the trigger for the bully on the ladder up above this door. As you can see, it simply appears once activating it. The ladder and bully will make their way up, where they remain indefinitely, along with this other bully who runs across a board that slides over the hole. Confusion sets even further in as our BFF returns when I move forward. I could not interact with them and found my camera locked in this general area. It eventually ended with me trying to progress as this bully up ahead began chasing me. This results in an unavoidable death. Thanks for the help, BFF. I think it's time to reset the game now, so let's push forward some more while we're at it. It's now time to take our anger out on the loss of our friend by inflicting destruction as we grab the sledgehammer and go to town. In this next room, we can beat them at their own game, as they'll doom themselves with their own trap. However, it's this next area where we'll see that we need a key, and as we progress and search for this key, we stumble upon a class that's in session. We have to sneak through this classroom without getting spotted by the second antagonist of the game. If she does see you though, she'll send her porcelain students, known as the bullies, after us. If this happens, and you manage to get to the next room and quickly climb this bookshelf, you can cause the bookshelf to fall on all the bullies, resulting in another achievement, Bully of Bullies. Once we get the key though, the teacher will come investigate, as we discover that she was a long-necked creature we saw from before. At this point, we need to splinter cell our way out of here as we sneak our way through the classroom once again. She spotted me during this instance, so I bolted for the elevator and managed to make my escape. Let's rewind back though, and take a closer look at what we just went through. I previously destroyed these bullies, however, I wrecked these fools once again, but in slow motion this time. Because why not? It was interesting to see how the bullies' models reacted to the game being slowed down, making for some fun payback. Moving on, I decided that I wanted to bring the sledgehammer with me to the teacher's classroom, which normally isn't possible. What could go wrong though? Well, I go in strong and destroy the first one, however my downfall was that I held my position. I feel like if I was more aggressive, I may have survived this. No matter, in another instance, I ended up hiding behind the barrier that keeps the player from falling off the map. This results with a pretty uncomfortable stare down, as you can see, but what I found even more entertaining is that the teacher will just stare us down if we decide to walk about all over her desk. Knocking down the bookshelf with a key on top, we can see how the teacher will move over and then begin walking towards the door. I'd like to take a second to reflect on the terror that is this teacher though. She reminds me of E.T., the extraterrestrial, except obviously 10 times more terrifying though. Nightmare fuel. It's almost like she's playing games with us, as she appears to know exactly where we are with her eyes looking down at us. When she decides to retreat from the room, she'll slide back a bit as she walks over to where we'll stand until we progress. Before testing the limits of the teacher, I went ahead and deleted her from existence. This allowed me to free the bullies from her terror, but as you can see, they simply don't react. Now, it took me a few tries during this part to see how the teacher reacts to chasing me. She nearly gets me here, as you saw, but I believe I'm too far now, seeing that she decided to send her bullies after me instead of chasing me herself. I tried this again, thinking she didn't leave the classroom, but was poorly mistaken, as it got snatched up by Miss Stretch Armstrong. It was the third attempt, where we're able to see that she'll come out of the classroom, but stop right at the lockers, freezing in place. The bullies were released, so I tried deleting the floor to possibly prevent them from stepping up into the next room. I would take them out myself, but it does not work. So I did the next best thing and hit on top of the locker. The bullies will come running over, as they are visibly upset with not being able to reach me. I will give them this, they do have hops, but it appears I'm safe from them. Warping over into this back room, I wanted to see if the teacher would react, but ended up only having the attention of one of the bullies instead. We'll see that these three simply have no idea what's going on. Meanwhile, the last mono that got eaten by the teacher is pleading for us to just move on already. Joking aside, not much else can be done here, outside of reawakening the trauma of elementary school experiences. So let's get back up on this elevator and continue further into this chapter. Making our way up and out of this elevator, we'll stumble upon a bully that appears to be busy. He's tied up like a dog and clearly wants blood. If we can evade this bully without harming him, it comes with an award, as we'll get an achievement when progressing to the next room. The achievement is Merciful Feet. We'll then make our way into this next area where the teacher is lurking down below. Alerting her as we come in, we need to hide, as she'll come investigate the disturbance. With that in mind, we just need to avoid dropping anything during this part, as we make our way up. However, we need to push this board down in order to escape, which will prompt her to investigate again. So we need to be quick. This follows with a big library area that we'll enter, as the teacher also enters from the background. We need to move this ladder to progress, but before doing so, if you place the ladder here, it'll lead you to another hat we can obtain, being the tin can hat. Once getting up here to progress though, we'll alert the teacher, and this brief horrific chase will occur as she tries to gobble us up. We basically have to play hide and seek with her as we traverse these towers of books. She will eventually give up looking for us, and we'll leave the area as she walks off to the next room. Let's revisit everything we just went through though. Coming back to the elevator, we can see how the school is loaded in at this point. We can get a better look at this bully's work of art as well, but not much else is going on at this part. So I execute the bully we were merciful to last time, and move on. This next part is where we encounter the teacher, as she's below us and appears to be repeatedly hitting something with a ruler. Coming down here to get a closer look, we'll see that she's in the middle of this room as she slaps her ruler into the air. It's almost as if she hurt her left arm, given the position it's in. But zooming out, we can get a look at the entirety of this section with the teacher. I decided to drop a bottle on her head to see how it plays out from down here. Her body straightens out as she begins to elongate her neck. Something tells me that I shouldn't be standing out here in the open like this, so I decided to just let her take me. She'll proceed to gobble up mono, as you can see. However, I believe the speed of the game could have been affecting this kill. But regardless, it does not look like a fun time to be mono, that's for sure. What a horrific way to go. We can come down here though and run around, as she appears to be cool with it. In this section, the teacher will only react to objects that are dropped from above, if I had to speculate. In one instance, she got me through the wall, and I was able to get a brief look at her doing a T-pose during this. It didn't last long though, as the game reset. When we escape though, she'll retract her head back down, and then make her way to the door, where she'll eventually disappear. It's not long before we once again see her though, as she'll appear in this back area once we progress. Instead of using the ladder to proceed, I decided to go ahead and start deleting these books and shelves. Coming back here does not bother the teacher one bit, but I did learn that it's impossible to take this way, as the camera will not follow us back here. Unglorious. We have to take the normal route to progress, and when doing this, if we come back here after being attacked by teacher number 1, we'll see that there is a teacher number 2 that finishes out the rest of this sequence. Number 1 will stand here indefinitely, as number 2 makes her way to the next section of this obstacle. So I did the same exact thing, and started deleting the bookshelves. Once done, I jumped on this first tower of books and discovered that the teacher still can't see us, despite us being directly in her view. I got brave and ended up jumping over to her, thinking she was going to be as harmless as teacher number 1. That's clearly not the case though, as our view is obstructed while she devours me with the game resetting. Something I learned, which makes sense, is that if we grab her attention here and then retreat back from where we came, you'll see that she only has one attack to spend, as she begins to carry on, like we just completed the section. Normally, we'd be on the second tower when she attacks, making it a do or die moment for us, but I digress. Loading up this checkpoint with the bookshelves gone, we can see that the teacher loads into the game in a strange manner. Getting a closer look, we can see how most of her body will contort as she peeks around the non-existent bookshelf. It looks rather painful, if I must say so myself. She'll leave this area though, and if we follow her, we'll see that she goes through the door, only to disappear immediately after. I tried seeing if she'd react to me being in front of her here, but she pieced out with zero interest in me. I also learned at this part that if I try to teleport while the game's frozen, as I'm hanging onto the book tower, we'll glitch out Mono. He'll continue to hang onto the books as the teleport continuously tries to rip him away, making for a wild sight. let's carry on as we normally would though. After pulling this box of books over to open the door, we'll pursue the teacher as we enter this room with a big staircase. Going upstairs and to the right will lead us to where we need to go, as we need to put the top of this chest piece back on in order to open the door. This leads us into a chest room, where we must place the correct top pieces on the lower ones. There is a guide you can find drawn on the wall here to help us. Doing all this, and then pulling this light that activates, will open a secret compartment in the background, where the key we need is located. After using the key, we need to venture down this hall and move this cart over to the right wall so we can climb up and out of here. Before doing so, we can enter this room on the left though. We'll find an individual that got carried away with the food, but more importantly, we'll find another glitching remain. Glorious. Moving on is where we have this battle with a few bullies, as 3 of them will attack us after destroying the unsuspecting first one. Taking one of their heads, we'll end up needing to wear it as we pose as a bully. This grants us safe passage to the next area, which involves a lot of bullies, well, being bullies. There are so many bullies throughout this scene, it makes sense why Mono is holding on tightly to his bully disguise. This follows with needing to push this button we can't reach, which leads us coming up here to push this container off the edge, in turn letting us take the brain that was inside the container and throw it at the button down below. We finally caught up with the teacher though. Following her into the next room, which is another classroom, we'll need to traverse the countertops here. So carefully doing this, Wait, she heard me! Oh god! Okay, that was close. Anyway, making our escape brings us to more bullies to destroy. There's a lot of them, but with patience and accurate swings, we shall prevail. Eventually we'll find our friend, who is strung up in this bathroom. Once saving our friend from these creeps, the 2 of them will have a nice reunion as Mono assists his BFF. It's now time to go back and see how this all plays out from another perspective though. So we just evaded the teacher, and now we're approaching the area right before the chess puzzle section. There's always going to be a backdrop like this whenever we encounter windows, as you can see here, but it became clear quickly that not much was going on in this chess area. So I went ahead and partially deleted this cabinet and snuck in to grab the key. This next part is where we fight a few bullies right before acquiring our disguise. However, I couldn't help but notice this one in particular that appears to be, well, I'll let you be the judge of that. Regardless, I don't think anyone should be eating whatever's in there. Speaking of which, we can find Picasso over here making a work of art as he draws in the scoop with his sausage. Yes, I know how that sounded. But anyways, he clearly sees no wrong with what he's doing. Meanwhile, there's chaos ensuing in the cafeteria area. There's a lot going on over here. From meatballs being tossed around the room, to this guy running wildly in place. I believe this was due to freezing time, because in another instance we could see him running about in the background like this. There's no order here, and no sight of the teacher. You'd think she'd hire a teacher assistant of some sort to help contain this madness. Once defeating these bullies, we need to put this mask on. We can see how Mono's hat will shrink as he's getting ready to put on this mask. He basically puts it in his torso, where it continues to shrink and disappear. I can't imagine this being a comfortable stroll for Mono while wearing this mask, with the chaos taking place around him on top of the blind spots that he probably has while wearing it. I think it'd be a panic-inducing experience. Although, I guess he wears a paper bag, so maybe he's chill. So there's some bullies here when we enter this hallway, they'll eventually run away. Following them shows that they will drop through the floor once they're completely out of our sight. Other than getting a closer look at all these bullies' miserable lives, that's all that really takes place here. Moving on, I noticed that Mono wasn't re-equipping his hat for some reason, but we have to give his brain in a jar now to open the door. We now have that scene where we encounter the teacher, and have to avoid her as we make our escape through this biology-looking classroom. I did some exploring behind the scenes here, but managed to find little to nothing going on that isn't in normal gameplay. The teacher will disappear if we bypass her though, as you can see. So I don't know why I didn't try this before, but it's time to pull out the Ant-Man suit. So I went super big to start off, and quickly realized it's going to be pretty difficult to navigate the halls of this size. We can't pick up the sledgehammer like this, but the bullies can't get us either. However, the bucket will destroy us, even if it grazes Mono. So after some troubleshooting, I deleted the bucket, then readjusted my size. Now, I'm not too big, but big enough to not get captured by these bullies. Their efforts are futile. Running down this hall is hilarious, as Mono appears to be running on ice. I ended up killing a couple with his bucket trap, but then struggled, as I tried to make my way into the next room. I realized I made a mistake with going big, seeing as I need the sledgehammer to free our friend. So I ran back to the hammer and got super small. Can you see me? Zooming in, we'll find Mono struggling to exist, as his hair waves all about. His arms appear to be in a, uncomfortable position. Existence is pain. It was incredibly hard to keep my eyes on Mono. I'm hardly visible. The best part, though, is that we can pick up the hammer. The process of killing the bullies is odd looking, but it could have something to do with a sledgehammer clipping through the ground. So we make our way back to free our friend. With the handle looking like a fin poking through the floor, one could say we're a hammerhead shark. Badum-tis. Let's just destroy all these fools in front of our BFF so they can see how much we care. It took a few extra attempts due to my size, but I managed to break the board holding the rope. Yay, we're back together again. Yeah, wait. Now I need to know what happens when the teacher interacts with us while in Ant-Man mode. So I quickly went back to the classroom with all the bullies and smashed them, even the peaceful ones. Meanwhile, the teacher will just watch as I do this. I tried taking her out with a sledgehammer, given the opportunity, but as you can see, it wasn't working. Making myself big gets no reaction out of her as well, obviously. But when I tried to make myself a little bigger, I ended up getting stuck. This resulted with Mono in this constant state of falling, appearing as if he were dancing. Just look at him go! The teacher is clearly impressed with his moves, as she stares at his feet. But making Mono a big boy while the teacher strikes is still a futile encounter. Let's continue on with our friend though, as we would normally. Carrying on, we'll make our way out this window as we cross this questionable wooden board. This leads us to a piano that we must raise into the air in order to break through the ground. However, if we get up on the piano first and run across the keys, we'll get an achievement: monotones. Once pushing the piano through the floor, we'll then be tasked with having to get this key from a lone bully that's right outside. Our BFF will play on the piano, which distracts the bully, as we're then able to grab the key and swiftly destroy the bully. Having the key now, we can progress to this next area where our friend will go to town on another bully. I sort of ruined it for them though. This will eventually lead us to some stairs and dressers, where we'll end up making our way into this room where the teacher can be found playing on the piano. For this entire scene, we must sneak down below so we can lower this walkway that allows us to escape this room. We must not move when the teacher stops playing the piano, because she will hear us otherwise. Once we find our way back up, we'll cross over and make our way out. This initiates probably the most terrifying chase scene in the game, if you were to ask me. The teacher will pursue us through these vents as she elongates her neck and violently pushes through. We'll get to a point where we need to jump as we narrowly escape this humanoid giraffe. From here on out, it's a pretty lax adventure as we cross this big but scrawny bridge. We'll then have to push this dumpster into position so that we can make our way up here. Immediately after this, if we go to where this paper boat is, we'll come across the final glitching remain of this chapter, giving us the School Kids achievement. However, it's in the next area that we end up with a reveal that the majority of you are probably already aware of. Our BFF is, well, it's actually 6 from the first Little Nightmares game. The True Colors achievement will unlock as this reveal takes place. However, this leads us to the end of the chapter where we end up making our way into the hospital. We now have the achievement for completing the chapter Schooled Now, so let's go back for a final time and take a closer look at this last segment. So after saving 6 from the bullies, we can get a closer look at the following one that we encounter once going outside. We can find her just digging this key into a dead frog. Clearly, she's enjoying it. If we take a wider look at this current layout, we can hear the teacher playing the piano, but the room isn't loaded in yet. So we're going to push forward from here and to the teacher, as not much occurs here outside of normal gameplay. Getting closer, the room will load in, but the teacher is still missing. It's only after we get up on this first counter that the teacher will load in. She'll just continue to play her Symphony of Death as she tweaks her musical piece. I mean, you gotta have hobbies, right? So let's see exactly what the teacher does here when she pursues us. She'll begin stretching her neck and head towards where we escaped. However, she'll snap into a T-pose, which is when we see her face pushing through behind us. We've always got to remember to have good posture when hunting our meals. Once narrowly escaping her face, we can see a second teacher rising from below during this. This teacher is the one we end up seeing poke out of the hatch we escaped from once we're outside. The second teacher will come back in and eventually come to a rest. It's quite an interesting execution between the T-posing and facial expressions. We can backtrack through here with Mono, as well as clip through the teacher's neck. We can go up and down the vent as well, even with it appearing to be damaged. 6 will patiently wait for us as she stares at the teachers. I also ended up finding a couple of bullies hiding here that I must have missed, as the world unloaded and revealed them while I pushed on. The teacher is starting to catch on to our game-breaking antics though, so we're gonna get out of here. And with that, that's everything I found behind the scenes while breaking Chapter 2 in Little Nightmares 2. It's now time for Chapter 3, as we make our way into the hospital. We can see that bad things are clearly taking place here, and likely still are, as we pass by what appears to be a lifeless body in a wheelchair that's in the background. The first obstacle we encounter is in this big room, where Mono nearly falls to his death. 6 will lead the charge though, as we make our way up these dangling beds. Once clearing this room, we'll find ourselves needing to use this battery that's plugged into this socket here. This will be a repeating theme throughout this chapter, as we'll be encountering similar situations with these batteries. This elevator starts to feel a bit sus, as it begins to lose its hold, prompting us to quickly escape through this vent. We'll then end up acquiring a much needed tool for this dark adventure, a flashlight, which so happens to help us find the first glitching remains of this chapter in the very next room. It'll be standing next to this red wagon, as you can see. Traversing through some dark halls will lead us into this room, where we'll need one of these cans from this vending machine to progress. However, continuously dispensing cans from this machine will unlock the achievement Hunger. Moving on though, we'll once again have what appears to be a painful experience with this TV. Like the previous instances with these TVs, we'll get pulled up by 6 before reaching the door. It's here though that we'll see we're in a big lobby area with these weird mannequins and an elevator that will end up needing 2 batteries to operate. So heading over this way, we'll find an X-ray machine that ends up helping us find a key that we'll need. Turning it on and holding 6's hand like so will unlock the X Best Friends achievement. Also, a clue to where the key's location is can be seen on the back wall here, appearing to be in a stuffed animal. Going into the next room, you'll want to grab the farthest right stuffed animal, as that'll be the one with the key. Using the X-ray machine will confirm this. Before doing that, there is a hat we can acquire in here though, which is located up here. It's the stuffed bear hat, which will unlock the half hat achievement. We're going to want to take this stuffed animal to this elevator though, which will take us down to this incinerator room. Throwing it in here and turning it on will incinerate it so we can acquire the key within, along with unlocking another achievement, being Toys Are for Kids. Heading back up and then up these stairs, we'll be able to proceed through this locked door now. Let's go back to when we entered this hospital though, and take another look at what we just went through. Coming back, we can see how the beginning is loaded in. There isn't too much going on out of bounds here though. However, we can take a closer look at these patients, as they are called. It's hard to tell just how much of these horrific creatures are human or something more sinister. But as most players will know, we'll be encountering more lively patients further into this chapter. So let's enjoy the harmless ones while we can. I ended up deleting this door to find that Mono can walk back here, but that's about all we can do. Aside from eventually falling through the floor and into the great beyond, that is. I tried getting myself over onto this particular patient's bed with Mono, but had no luck. So I carried on, as I casually attempted to make my own paths with 0 luck. Watching the elevator fall with Mono and 6 still on it will show that Mono will clip through it, resulting with a never-ending fall into this black abyss. After acquiring the flashlight though, I decided to change the view, which basically makes the flashlight useless. It also will make certain parts more difficult as well. After deleting some doors and messing around though, we can see that they clearly lead to nowhere, as we take a look at the overall area with the camera. However, this is where I noticed something odd. It appeared to be a screen filter of some sort that's out here in front of the map. I'm not entirely sure what it's for, but maybe you could hazard a guess in the comments. Moving on though, more of these patients will be revealed once having this interaction with the TV, which will warp us up to this hallway above the TV's location. I went into big boy mode here, which does let us see how Mono is currently in this televised state, but once getting ripped out of the TV by 6, Mono's size returns to normal, along with the televised appearance fading away. The X-ray machine was interesting while taking a closer look at it, as it appears that the visual effect within the machine is confined inside it. As you can see, the skeleton of 6 will move with the camera. Coming down and putting the stuffed animal inside this incinerator though, we'll see that once we turn it on, a fiery spotlight will shine on the door, with the items that were placed inside simply disappearing, as the key that we'll need appears in their place. Zooming out from here, I noticed there's what appears to be popcorn right outside this incinerator. We can also find the toy that 6 threw in there as well, out on this white platform. This popcorn will make more sense as to why it's here in a little while, but now it's time to make our way through this locked door and carry on. So unlocking and making our way through this door, we'll see that there's clearly a mad doctor of some sort that resides here, as there's tons of prosthetic parts hanging all about. Out in the hallway just after this first room, if we head back where more of these limbs are stored, we'll find a glitching remain that we can collect. Going through this door with 6's help is where we want to proceed though. There's a partial body strapped to a table in here, and once trying to proceed, the hand of this body will begin to freak out, as it breaks off the body and scurries off into the darkness. Venturing deeper into this room, we'll be able to hear this hand rummaging around in the background. Dropping down at this point though, is where the hand will come out, as it will try to grab us. We basically want to keep away from it as we climb our way up here and out of the room. It'll continue to follow Mono up until we make our way out of the vent and into this hallway. Naturally, I just kept running, as I thought it may have been still pursuing me. However, it's at this point where we can hear it and see that it's up in the vents above us now, as we run for our life. Eventually dropping down from the vents, we'll want to dodge it and keep pushing forward. This is where we'll have to face off with its wannabe thing from the Addams family. Each successful hit with a sledgehammer will cause it to retreat. Once killing it though, if you repeatedly strike it, you'll get the achievement and stay dead. But now we can grab this battery and move on. This follows with us regrouping with 6, as she's creepily playing with a prosthetic limb, but now we have one of the 2 batteries we need for this elevator. You'll want to use the battery over on this door, granting us access to this next area in which we need to go through. Remember that popcorn we found outside the incinerator? Well, there's a corn cob here that we can pick up, and if we take it down to the incinerator and turn it on, we'll hear a bunch of popping as we unlock the achievement Popcorn. Going inside, we'll find the popcorn, as some of them are still popping. If only we had some butter. Getting back on track though, this is where we'll encounter the first hostile patient, as it'll begin pursuing us once the light is turned off. However, the flashlight is our savior, as it will stop them in their tracks. The light is their weakness. Accuracy and patience will help us bypass these hostile creatures, as we'll be evading multiples of them in the next area. It's truly a panic-inducing section of the game, if I had to say so myself. Once getting to this point though, I believe we're safe, as we'll now go back and take a closer look at everything we just endured. So coming back to where we got this key to open this locked door, we'll see that we're in over our head, with legs and arms dangling about. Zooming out here, it's fair to speculate that there's over hundreds of these parts in all the rooms in which we'll end up walking through. There's also a random box of parts that can be found right outside in front of the map. Watching this hand break off the body we come across is of course terrifying. However, if we stay on it as it makes its way into the background, we'll see it come to a stop, where it will sit indefinitely. This is when I realized that there are multiple hands being used for this entire scene, as you can see. This one down the end of this room will just be chilling as it waits for us to proceed. Anyone care for a massage? So I initiated this interaction with this thing and just ran around, trying to plan my next move. That's when I remember there's technically an invisible wall between our view and the room we're in, bringing into question whether or not our hand friend will leap out of the room if we delete this invisible wall. It absolutely does, as you can see, which I found to be hilarious. We can see that the hand doesn't disappear either, as it falls forever into the great beyond. On the other hand, no pun intended, when it grabs Mono, it almost looks as if it's suffocating him, making for a gruesome death. So this prompted me to go into big boy mode to see if it couldn't handle size, sort of like the bullies in the previous chapter. It did appear to be confused at first, like it wasn't able to attack Mono. However, this doesn't last long. It ends up grabbing us and automatically adjusts in size while doing so, beating us at our own game. With my next attempt, I of course decide to go small this time, thinking for sure that it won't be able to get us this time around. It makes a heroic leap to start, as it completely misses Mono. Immediately after this though, you'll see that it ends up matching our size as it proceeds to destroy us. So the Ant-Man suit is definitely a no-go with this deadly hand assassin. Moving on, when we make our escape through this vent, we can see that the hand will simply end up disappearing as the vent cover moves on its own. Following this is where we'll see that the hand is up above in the vents as it stalks us. Coming up here though, we'll see that there's no hand in these vents. It is only until we see it drop down when the hand actually comes into play. It drops in from above the room itself, as you can see. This hand will scurry off into the back here where it ends up disappearing. All the while, another hand awaits for our arrival over by the battery where we end up fighting it. This one is another hand that we do not interact with, as it too scurries away behind these boxes, where it resides indefinitely, prompting yet another hand which we'll end up fighting. Not today though, as I've had enough of these darn hands. Despite the hand flying off the edge, the fighting music will continue to play, but this doesn't appear to make a big sequence break, in case you're wondering. This follows meeting back up with 6, who is, we'll just say, enjoying herself? I mean, she had to hear me struggling in the other room, right? Why is she no help? Anyways, ignoring the red flags, let's move on. In the room where the corn cob is, we can see some pictures up on the wall, which I found to be interesting. Displaying a patient with no arms, and another picture displaying an operation taking place with students observing. It's time to mess with this angry patient though. I once again pull out the Ant-Man suit, really thinking that this could help us avoid death this time around. I mean, I'm towering over this fool. There's no way. Joke's on me though, as the patient grabs a hold of Mono's insides and proceeds to delete us. Going small does seem to delay the patient's reaction time with pursuing Mono, but ultimately results in death as well. It'll simply scoop us off the ground and keep us forever. Frustrated with this patient, I deleted the door from where we came, which resulted in messing up the patient and how it wanted to get to us. I win! I guess? With that though, I went ahead and deleted it and moved on, only to get jump scared by the patient I thought I had deleted, as it reappeared for its final attempt at grabbing us. I found that even though they can grab us as a tiny man, it seems to be the most effective way to mess around with the patients as they struggle to lock onto me. Let's carry on as we normally would. Moving forward, we're going to take this vent here, which will lead us into, from the looks of it, a smelly room. There will be a piece of cheese that's next to the bed in here, which we're going to want to take with us. Entering this hallway, we'll want to take the piece of cheese back this way and head through the first door to Mono's left. There will be a room here with a hole in the middle of the floor where you'll want to throw the cheese into. This will give us the achievement Objection. There's also a glitching remain here, which we'll go ahead and obtain as well. From the looks of this room though, it appears someone spent quite a while in here, if I had to guess. We're now going to endure a dire scene as a barrage of hands begin to break through the doors as we're running down this hall. It's quite honestly terrifying, and it follows with patients beginning to break out the doors as they horrifically pursue us. The flashlight is once again our best friend, as it can make this chase scene a tad easier on us. This will follow with us entering a shower area, but if you head back to this corner first and move this box of soap bars, we can go through this vent, leading us to a padded room where the final glitching remain of this chapter can be found, hence unlocking the Sick Kids achievement. Back in the shower though, we'll want to throw the soap at this button to proceed. Here, there'll be a patient that's sitting in a wheelchair in the center of the room, which we'll need to make our way up and through this window in the door. Going back and turn the light off will get this patient off the chair, allowing us to move it and make our way out. Mono will then have another run for his life moment, and we'll have to evade quite a few hostile patients, as we then slide to safety into the next room. There will be a ball in here that we can pick up and toss at the patients that are now reaching through the boards, which will unlock the Medicine Ball achievement. We'll now want to turn this power on though, which will blow a fuse and give us the battery we've been looking for. Six will be waiting for us as we hand off the battery, so she can get us out of here, as you can see. We can now finally head back to this elevator, where we can now plug in both batteries, allowing us to use it as we head further down into this horrific hospital. Let's go ahead and take a look at everything we just went through though. Heading back, we had just escaped some patients, and when loading in, this one in particular can be found stored right outside the map. This fall with me trying to go back here into these halls, which didn't last long, as there was no collision back here, hence falling through the map and into the abyss. However, we can now get a better look at this room, where it appears that someone didn't make it to the toilet in time. How lovely. Once entering this room though, we can see that the arm-filled hallway has loaded, along with a portion of the hospital remaining further back. Getting a look back behind these doors though is like a fever dream, if I must say so myself. We can find various patients back here twitching about as they clip through one another. There's also a torso in here which will flail about, which sadly is basically all it would be able to do, I guess. What a life that must be. The arms that end up bursting through the doors as we run down this hall can be seen here as they await for us to trigger them. This makes sense that they are merely just shoulders and arms, as we'd obviously never see this normally. You can also see that some of the arms at the higher parts of the doors are already reaching through before we proceed. However, there is one lonely, fully loaded patient in this area amongst the arms. Before proceeding, I threw this cheese in the hole again to see if anything occurred within the hole. Turns out that the cheese simply falls forever into the great beyond. Or at least, that's what I thought initially, as I ended up seeing it on this white slab once I progressed a little further. To make this part a bit easier though, I waved my hair back and forth as I became a tiny man. It went smoothly as I predicted, with the hands being unable to reach me. But then this patient bursted out the door and snatched me up. You may have already guessed, but becoming a big boy is not the way to go here, as you can clearly see. So with the help of the flashlight, I once again cautiously made my way through this part with much better results. We gotta give Mono some credit here though, because personally, I'm just not sure I'd be able to go through with half the stuff this boy has endured since the beginning of this little yet big nightmare. Deleting all these homeboys though, I came back here to find this one patient in particular that doesn't seem to react to Mono or his light. I also found myself being able to enter this room with the patients that are twitching and flailing all about. Granted, it may have something to do with my size, but at this point, I wasn't trying to find out otherwise. So let's carry on. We're now at the part with the wheelchair patient, which doesn't have much to show outside of normal gameplay. So I went ahead and destroyed the patient, and then before carrying on, took a closer look at this one that's in the bathtub in the background. We once again have to evade a swarm of patients in this large, dark room, which doesn't have much to hide when brightening up the view. However, I did find this particular patient entertaining with its big chompers. He's all smiles, as you can see. Once we slide under these boards though, we'll see the patients reach through as they try to grab us. Like the terrifying hallway from before though, we'll see that there's a bunch of floating arms during this, as they'll spawn in once reaching this point. Being a jerk, I tried locking 6 in this room, but she managed to slip out just in time during my initial attempt. Unfortunately for 6 though, she can't teleport like Mono, and the deed is done. She'll just sit there as we utilize the batteries to get the elevator opened. But like in many cases with trying to ditch her, the joke's on me, as the elevator will simply not activate without her. Once we take the elevator down though, we can see how this portion of the level will unload, with some objects that are left behind, simply falling into the great beyond. We're now deeper into this hospital though, so let's carry on as we normally would. Pushing on, it's extremely dark down here, as we light the way with our flashlight through this prosthetic-filled hallway. This will eventually lead to a broken door that is boarded up, as the morgue freezer appears to have something inside it that wants out. 6 will end up holding the door, as another killer hand comes out after us. Getting 2 successful hits on the hand results with 6 being unable to hold the door, as a second hand appears. It's 2 versus 1 now, but with some constant mobility, we can make quick work of these pesky hands. Progressing, we'll see some familiar faces on the wall, which leads to Mono and 6 meeting who I can only assume is the maker of them, and everything we've encountered in this chapter thus far. The Doctor. This bloated cadaver gives off Boomer vibes from Left 4 Dead, if you were to ask me. This giant terror moves about as if he's Spider-Man, as he traverses along the ceiling, making for a peculiar antagonist. We'll have to sneak by him as he works on one of his current patients. This follows with a room where we can see he's taking care of multiple patients, as we'll need to grab one of these objects in the back of the room so we can open the door to the next area, all while evading his sight. Opening the door will alert him, forcing us to hide under this bed as he comes in to investigate. He'll eventually leave the area, allowing Mono and 6 to progress up here and above the ceiling. This will lead to another morgue-like area where we need to pull this out here and then allow 6 to push us back in as we enter the other side. Before doing anything, if you come over to this particular freezer and go into it, you'll find another collectible hat, which appears to be a mask of bandages. The key we need is here, so we'll go ahead and move these like so. Now we can jump over, then climb up and drop down as we obtain the key. We then meet up with 6 as we unlock and make our way through the door. Let's go ahead and take a look at everything we just ventured through though. After coming out of the elevator, we can get a better look at everything with the view being brightened up. However, there isn't too much revealed here, even with taking a look at Abounds as well. Coming up to the area where we had to fight these 5-fingered demons, we can see the one that's in the freezer is just calmly waiting, as 6 struggles to hold the door from opening. We can also see the other one load in under the stretcher during all of this. I ended up making a mistake though, by doing what I had done before, with deleting the invisible barrier so the hands will leap out of the room and to their death. Once getting them to do this, I quickly realized that I broke a way out of here, as I wasn't able to progress through the door. The hands are not technically dying like before, so there's no win condition triggered. We can observe them falling endlessly into this black abyss. They look like dots from here, but we can zoom way down here to see them as they fall past us one by one. However, I decide to just delete the door and move on without 6. The Doctor is, just as terrifying as you probably imagine, as you can see. Going above the ceiling, we can see his feet and legs protruding through as they move about, with the feet doing some intense stretching exercises. This particular patient that the Doctor has on the table was interesting to watch as he works on it. It has a baby face, making it automatically creepy, but we can see when he pops the head off, it actually goes inside the body of the patient. Then we'll see that the Doctor will grab a new head out of this drawer as it appears in his hand. This new head that the Doctor puts on the body doesn't come from nowhere though, as we can find it sitting out of bounds near the room, waiting to transfer to his hand. I end up getting in a pickle with the Doctor as I scramble to keep away from the monster. Then 6 randomly shows up like she's gonna help or something, only for the Doctor to end up grabbing me through the shelves. Getting to where we need to hit the button to open the door and progress, I decide to just delete the door, so that we wouldn't alert the Doctor when proceeding. He'll remain in that room instead of coming to investigate, like we saw before. But once we get far enough, well, the room unloads, resulting with our dear large friend plummeting into the great beyond. He leaves a trail of debris as he falls, and it was hilarious to watch. Sayonara, sucker. Joke's on me though, as he reloads back in and takes this peculiar path through the next room, as he goes out of bounds and then slowly slides further back behind the level. Turns out that this Doctor was a second one that loaded in though, as we can see the other one still falling way down below us. He will just chill here indefinitely until we progress, as you can see. This is what peak performance looks like, rolls and all. I deleted some doors as I progressed, finding myself still unable to pass, even with this locked door as well. The padlock will remain, but as you can see, we shall not pass. so I warped over to the key to obtain it. Like our hat in the previous chapter, when picking up the key, we can see that it too will shrink as Mono puts it on this person, eventually disappearing. However, now we can open this non-existent door and stop here, as we continue on as we normally would. We'll now head up here and into some more vents, where we'll see that we need a battery to proceed. Heading to the room where the doctor is conducting some more business, you'll see the battery we require, which is located within one of the morgue freezers. So we'll sneak Mono and Six over to the other side of this room, where we can then get a boost from Six to enter. There's a patient here who's hooked up to a heart monitor. The patient is heavily breathing behind a hospital curtain, and looks like yet another miserable creature within this game. Becoming a little nightmare for this struggling patient, we're going to climb up here and into the ceiling, where we can now drop down and pull this lever. This will flatline the patient, hence grabbing the attention of our large friend, as he frantically comes in to try and remedy the situation. Successfully hiding under this rack will allow us to slip by, and back into this room where we can now retrieve this battery. Pulling this body out of the freezer, we can now make our way up and grab it. However, once we bring the battery over here to open the door, we will alert to the doctor, which follows with a chase. He'll plow through all the obstacles as he moves, and if we're not fast enough, we'll end up dead. We'll find ourselves reaching a cremation chamber if we evade the doctor, which we'll want to go into. The scene gets claustrophobic real quick, but if we act fast and make our way back out, like so, we can trap the doctor within. Now, we could turn it on and torch this fool, but if you decide not to and proceed with taking the elevator, you'll be granted the achievement, First Do No Harm. You also get the Hospitalized achievement for completing the chapter. So with that, let's go back for a final time and take a look at everything we just went through. We're going to head back up and into these vents, where we'll see the rooms above are loaded in at this point. The doctor loads in when we're all the way up, but if we don't go into the room he's in right away, we'll see that he will stand by for us until we enter. He'll be in this consistent state of motion that appears as if he's revving a chainsaw, or perhaps having a mental breakdown. Regardless, it's a bit funny looking. Entering the room, he'll get to work, as he washes his hands. He'll grab parts of a patient and place it over here, eventually grabbing the saw in the sink. He carries it in a strange manner, and will begin hacking away at the body he had just pulled out. Taking a closer look at this patient that is struggling with its labored breathing was interesting, as I don't believe we ever saw a patient that was breathing prior to this. Seems the doctor is perfecting his art. At any rate, I wanted to get up on this bed with the patient, which we normally can't do, so I went up top, deleted a ceiling panel, and dropped in. Of course, the patient doesn't react to us, but here we are. Imagine struggling to live as a small child is on top of you going, well, like that. I imagine parents can relate to this. However, I went ahead and tried to get off the bed and thought I may have gotten myself stuck as I floated about. This was probably due to deleting the current though, if I had to guess. Pulling the lever, I went ahead and warped over back to this room to get a head start on the doctor. However, this resulted with, soft locking the doctor? We can watch as the patient flatlines and essentially dies, since the doctor didn't come over and pull the lever back up. He just remains in this frozen state, not moving at all. It could have had something to do with slowing the game down, but I can't be certain. Even Six is confused with what's going on, as she panics and begins moonwalking in place. However, the doctor pulled a fast one on me, as he awakens from playing possum, ultimately tracking me down and capturing me. So this time, I let him tend to his patient, which is funny looking to see. Obviously, this makes sense, as the curtain should be here. Nevertheless though, still terrifying. So I deleted the patient to further frustrate our large friend, and went ahead and grabbed the battery. Putting the battery in, we can see him teleport back to this position, which then prompted me to teleport up in the ceiling where the patient is. Normally, at this point, he's chasing us. However, once the chase sequence began, he knew exactly where I was, as he did a 180 and beelines right for me. Joke's on him this time around though, as it appears he's unable to get me up here, thankfully. Whew. He'll just hilariously hang there like a cat, frustratingly trying to cough up a hairball. He will track me up here briefly once I start moving, but he ended up going back into the other room where he starts playing possum again. I pull the lever for a second time, thinking it may crash the game or something, but nothing happens. So at this point, I warp back to where he begins to chase us usually, only to find him going back to his normal routine, as if we haven't opened the door with the battery yet. Now I can go ahead and mosey on through this chase scene with no worry. Oh dang, I lied. He snapped back into his chase sequence. That's just great. So I unfortunately ended up doing this chase scene again, with Six hilariously showing up out of nowhere toward the end of the chase. What I found interesting though, is that once we get the doctor inside the cremation chamber, we can see the doctor clip out of the chamber as it goes behind it. He'll sit here momentarily, but eventually will disappear. You can see the door banging still though, with no sign of the doctor anywhere. So I went ahead and lit the flames within, where we can see a warm glow of light that's inside, as Six enjoys the deathly heat. Yet another red flag, perhaps? The deed is done though, as we've reached the end of Little Nightmares 2, Chapter 3, The Hospital. The Pale City awaits us in Chapter 4. We had just got done cooking the doctor in a crematory, which followed with taking this elevator as we entered Chapter 4. Exiting the elevator, we'll make our way through this lobby, which will eventually lead us to this window. Jumping out into this gloomy alleyway, as I made my way back here, I ended up getting the achievement in the palm of my hand. This is simply earned by holding Six's hand for a total of 6 minutes. We climb down this manhole, and hopefully don't do what I just did. Here we'll find the first glitching remain of this chapter, who was sitting on this ledge. Moving on, we'll run through the rain as we hear thud-like sounds in the distance. Horrifyingly enough, it's the sound of bodies falling from the buildings in the background. We'll end up back inside as we take the stairs up, but then we will be greeted by a body that comes crashing through the ceiling. The creature will begin screeching, and then will run away from us. This guy's morning run doesn't last long though, as we'll find its lifeless body with his head pushed through a TV. Maybe he was trying to change the channel? We make our way over to another building, where we'll find another one of these weirdos peeking through the crack of a door, helping us realize that these creatures have some type of fixation with TVs. There will be a couple more we come across that are glued to TV screens, so we'll just let them creepily enjoy their shows. This will lead us to the first puzzle we'll need to figure out, which starts with getting down to this elevator as we take it up. We'll want to jump off here though and begin climbing, as we'll find where the elevator stops. It requires a key, which can be found in the next room in this desk drawer. After opening the elevator, we'll then send it back down and back up again as we jump on top of it, allowing us to progress. Going left from here, we can enter this vent, which will lead to another glitching remains we can collect. But ultimately we'll want to head this way, where we'll find ourselves with quite the view. Stopping here though, let's go back and take a closer look at everything we just went through. Starting off, if we zoom out, you'll see that not much is loaded in at this point, but we can see what I believe is the tower that we had just seen prior to coming back. Changing the view, we'll see this cool formation of clouds that surrounds the tower, which is quite a ways up here. We can find a little orange ball up here, which is the light we'd normally be seeing from here. It's quite the spectacle, like something out of a fever dream, but I did notice something floating down below it. Going in for a closer look, you'll see that it's a portrait of a droopy face, making for a random find, which is all I came across as I explored out here. Stepping into the lobby area will, in turn, load in the alleyway up ahead. Exploring this area doesn't reveal much, as it's basically like the rest of the alleyways we've come across during this out-of-bounds endeavor. There's also more clothes that will repeatedly fall throughout the background and into the abyss. Coming down into the sewer, where the first glitching remains is, we'll see how it overall appears off camera, along with a fishing line here that only goes down so far. However, this led me to heading back up to the top of this tower as I tried to see if I could get Mono up here. The building itself had no collision, but the orange ball did, resulting with Mono being on top of the world. Going back to the player's view, you'll clearly see that it's unplayable, as the camera snaps upwards towards the ceiling. Moving on though, I took a closer look at the background areas as I progressed, with no surprising reveals. However, I did find this picture to be curious, as it appears this viewer, as they're called, has 8 eyes. Can't say I ever came across one of them that had eyes, which drove me to question the poster. What do you guys think it could mean? All I know is that they don't seem happy, as we can see these ones in particular throw themselves off the buildings as they fall to their demise. Maybe their TVs stopped working? I was trying to get a closer look at them during this, but as soon as I began to zoom in, they'd sadly unload. The boundaries for their culling range seem to be different from the objects themselves. Teleporting over here, you can see that I get the same results, which makes sense, seeing as we're obviously not supposed to be able to come back here. Moving forward though, this is where we encounter a viewer that ends up falling through the ceiling. Checking this out from out of bounds, we can see there's text up above where the viewer ends up coming from. It reads, broken planks for ceiling when TV person falls that animators can use. Move down 600 units. A developer must have left this gift for the animation pass on this area. The body will appear right next to the text as it begins to fall. Following this TV person, we'll see that once he reaches the TV that he ends up running into head first, he vanishes, with a duplicate of him appearing instead. Moving on to the next TV people that we encounter, I messed around with deleting some things and getting a closer look at them, with their faces consisting of stretched flaps of skin. Truly horrific, if you were to ask me. I was surprised to find out that they are hostile if you get too close, as they shoot these sonic-like waves at us, ultimately taking us out. It's death by screeching, which apparently only affects mono, as 6 does nothing to help the situation. Wondering what's going on behind the shower curtain with this particular TV person, I took a closer look, finding that the model isn't as detailed as the rest, which of course makes sense, seeing as we normally wouldn't be able to enjoy bath time with them like this. Zooming out though, we'll see that we're at the first puzzle we encounter for this chapter, and as you can see, there isn't much going on outside of normal gameplay here. Promptly making my way through this obstacle, we then find ourselves where we had left off. So with that, let's continue on now. So after taking in this glorious, gloomy view of the signal tower, we're gonna head up this way, where we'll end up assisting 6 with this contraption here, in turn allowing us to jump over to 6. Climbing up a couple ladders and a gutter, we'll head into this building, where things begin to fall apart. Quite literally, actually. The building will begin to shake as the ceiling slowly starts to come down. We'll want to start rushing through this part, as the ceiling doesn't hold long. It's another one of those chase scenes where we need to stay ahead, as we'll ultimately fall down and through the floor, with the screen fading to black. As mono comes to, we'll see that our flashlight is toast. 6 is trapped within the debris, hence needing our help as we pull her out. We'll find ourselves in a dead-end room that appears to be a child's room, which follows with us going down this hall. This leads us to another TV interaction that requires us to go in. However, this time it's a little different. We'll actually make it to the door this time to open it. In a pink hue, a slender man with a hat can be seen sitting in a chair, as everything begins to get intense. Once he starts to get up from the chair is when 6 rips us out of the TV, essentially saving us. You'll be able to see this thin man within the TV at this point, as he too begins to make his way out of the TV. He then pursues us for a short but horrifying chase. This will lead us into the other room that we had just been in prior to this incident. Sliding under the bed will offer us safety though. However, this does not turn out to be the case for 6, as she falls out from under the table while trying to hide. 6 then gets ripped away from us with her glitching remains being visible, only to vanish as we approach them. Heading back to the TV, we're going to want to approach it once again, as we end up taking a wild, trippy ride through this flesh-like wormhole. This follows with mono bursting out of another TV, as we've just discovered a new way of traveling. After that mind-boggling trip, we'll make our way up and out of this room, as we're going to be using these TVs on the regular now. Positioning this TV over here and then going through this door, we'll want to go through this TV once again, as we'll be able to progress. Coming up here, we'll run across the sides of these buildings, eventually reaching another TV puzzle. Coming down here is where a remote controller can be found, as we'll now be able to turn the TVs on and off, which ends up being crucial in upcoming scenarios. Pushing on though, if we drop down and immediately head back here, we'll find another collectible hat, being a postal carrier hat. Proceeding forward, we'll want to keep this hat on, as it will be needed for an achievement that's coming up. Turning this TV on though, we'll then position this cart over here like so, then TV warp back to where we were. Now we can swing across and proceed forward, as the cart we had just positioned gives us a path to cross over. Let's backtrack from here though, and check this all out from another perspective. Zooming out, where we get this lovely view, we can see how the buildings are positioned, with a void being visible down below, as the buildings further back are less detailed. If we come over here though, there is a glitching remain I forgot to mention. Getting a closer look, we can see it's jumping up and reaching towards the crates in front of it. We can see it was intrigued with these creatures that are caged up, being a combination of rats and giant moth-like bugs. Anyways, while messing around in this area, I tried warping over to the buildings in the background, with no luck sadly, as they have no collision. Moving on, we'll come to the part where the ceiling ends up crashing down on us if we don't move fast enough, so I decided to sit here and see what happens as we're crushed. As mentioned previously, slowing down the game will cause Mono's model to have an exaggerated reaction to impacts, resulting with this spectacular dance, as Mono flails all about through the air. It's pretty hilarious to watch, along with seeing 6 have no reaction to the collapsing ceiling. However, while we're leaping into this hole for safety, we can see how the ceiling comes down on 6, who ends up disappearing during this instance. She'll end up reappearing as we land down below, which makes sense, seeing as normally during this part, the game will briefly fade to black, hence hiding this disappearing and reappearing act altogether. We can see the TV hallway is loading in at this point though, so let's go ahead and give it an overall closer look. If you try to leave this area once the TV gets us in this discombobulated state, you'll see that we cannot leave this room. However, I decided to warp Mono out of the room in efforts to save him from this traumatic scene that's about to take place. Sadly, Mono remains in distress though, as he still has trouble moving about. So scrapping that idea, I went in head first, as I warped into the room where our tall friend was patiently waiting for us. It took a minute, with some technical difficulties, but I managed to get myself in here and was able to walk about, as you can see. The Thin Man, as he's called, is the person behind the transmission that's causing the distortion of the Pale City. He has quite the menacing vibe with his appearance. While observing him, it's fair to speculate that Mono and the Thin Man may have something in common. Hint hint, nudge nudge. I digress though, there wasn't much I could do in here with him, aside from getting stuck in the air like so. Once 6 rips us out of this dangerous situation though, if we go back up, we can see that the Thin Man will just stand there, as he'll do this indefinitely throughout this scene. However, a duplicate of the Thin Man is used here once it begins to make its way through the TV. The hands we end up seeing on the TV screen are just that, a pair of hands floating within the TV. However, once he begins to make his way out of the TV, you'll see he comes out from under the floor. I had to go back a few times here to find exactly where he comes from. Also, I realized that slowing the game down may have altered how he is coming up and out during this whole sequence. Eventually though, I found that he'll spawn in as this contorted ball as he spins up into the room, where we can then see him making his way through the TV. Like the character from Poltergeist 2, he'll stare us down as he menacingly approaches us. When the Thin Man manages to get Mono, you'll see that it almost looks like he's force choking him, with Mono eventually zipping to his hand as he sadly holds Mono up in the air right before the game resets. During a sequence where he sees 6, you'll see in a similar fashion, he'll reach out once again as he pulls 6 out of the room. Once they reach the hallway though, the Thin Man will simply disappear, as 6 disappears shortly after him. Of course, we'll see 6's glitching remains sadly vanish at this point, but looking out of bounds though, we can see the weird wormhole that Mono ends up falling through once we go into the TV. During this trippy scene, I sadly could not break off camera during this scene to get another perspective though. It was interesting to watch in slow motion however. So now that we're in this new area, I zoomed out and found that we are actually quite far from where we just were, as all that remains down here is the flesh tunnel. Yes, I know what I just said. I was able to take the camera through it this time, but as you can see, it's not quite the same as when Mono goes through it. But here it is. Moving on though, we're not going to have to take a couple TV trips to progress at this point. Getting a closer look at this TV teleportation, you'll see Mono as he clips through and into the TV, where he'll begin to contort within right before disappearing. And of course, as you may have guessed, he'll simply spawn within the following TV during this process. We've reached the part where we must move this cart to move on though. But instead, I simply instant transmission my way across as we'll now proceed forward as normal. Pushing on, we'll want to get up to this coat hanger and take it for a ride as we zip across and crash through this window. Entering the next room, we'll find a TV person that is glued to a TV. Luckily, this will allow us to pass by the viewer with no issue. Walking through this kitchen and onto this small balcony, there's a TV hanging here that we'll want to turn on. Once doing this, we'll want to make our way back to where the TV person is and hide behind this chair. Turning off the TV that the viewer is glued to will upset her, as she proceeds to the other one hanging outside, since we had turned it on. Now we can use this one to teleport over to the hanging one. We'll then climb our way up here as we make it up to, yet again, another TV person. However, turning this TV on and the other one off will cause a TV person to rush over to the one that's on, as he plummets to his death. Now the way is clear, as we'll make our way across. From here, we'll run across some more rooftops, as we'll eventually zip down and into a quite morbid scene. I'm not going to pretend I know what's going on here, but it appears that the signal tower has a bunch of these TV people in a trance, which is causing them to, well, leap off the building. One by one, we can observe these poor individuals plunge downward. Next, we go ahead and jump down here, as we'll want to travel through this TV. Before doing so though, you'll want to go out this window and push this TV off the ledge. Otherwise, we'd end up falling to our death. So once doing so and safely making our way across here, we can push on, as we'll now need to open this door. Removing the boards will cause the TV person that's waiting behind the door to activate, as they begin beating the door down. Backtracking to this lever as quickly as possible, you want to get ready and zap this fool, as we electrocute them once they step into the water. Let's take a closer look at everything we just covered though. Zooming out before we take this coat hanger for a ride, we'll see the current layout that's loaded in. Doing this, I notice a figure standing out in front of the room we are coming up to next. Getting a closer look, it appears to be the TV person that we end up tricking with a TV that's hanging outside the kitchen window. However, while making my way to this area, I took another look and found that this actually may not be the case. As you can see, there are two of them now. I figured this one out of bounds may have been used for a particular interaction, but found that to be an unlikely case, as each of them has minor but different features. Their faces, or lack thereof, aren't the same, along with the hair color. Coming back out and observing this scene as we perform the steps in order to proceed, you'll see that this TV person that's out of bounds never budges. Ultimately, this drove me to conclude that this out-of-bounds TV person may be an extra that they just left in, given the totality of the scene. Before continuing, there's a hidden room I missed during my first pass-through of this area. If you climb out of the window you just came through, you can enter another window farther back. And for you lore enthusiasts, this one is pretty cool. It appears to be the ladies' room from Little Nightmares 1. Possibly just before she left to go into the Maw again, given the photos on the wall. We can find her picture on the dresser, alongside photos of guests in the Maw itself. There's also a porcelain doll on the ground too, alongside where a glitching remain is. We can see she has packed up a suitcase, and can even see a very suspicious looking brochure of sorts has been shoved through her door. The mail has a sinister stamp as well. Outside the room, we can still see the walls consist of white boxing, as the materials feature the grid-like pattern that's common to see. There's old food still on the fridge that isn't fully rotten, so it really makes you wonder how long she has been gone, if at all at the moment. Let's resume our route though. So moving on, I made my way to this fella, who is also enjoying some TV time. When making this fool obsessively rush over to the other TV, he dooms himself. If we follow him down though, we'll see that he bangs against this rooftop, almost disappearing immediately after. At this point, I decide to see if the TV we just used could be used again, seeing that we destroyed this particular one in the process. Teleporting over, I quickly realized that no, we cannot, which makes sense. We're now coming up to the morbid scene where all the TV people are in a trance with a signal tower as they practice their diving skills. To my surprise, I didn't realize that there were 11 of these individuals out here, as you can see. All of these viewers out here are the same model too. I figured it was safe to assume that these guys simply disappear when they fall off the buildings, but that's not the case. They'll fall, but only so far down, where they then freeze in midair. It's pretty funny looking to observe, overall making for a bizarre scene. Moving on and down below, I noticed a red cube out here, which I believe is implemented for the red glow we see within the TV. I decide to reset here though, as I plunge to my death. Doing this resets the poor individuals we just got done observing. So I warped my way back up here and then tried to see if I could interact with them, seeing as they had remained standing and had not walked off the building. They are completely unaware of Mono's existence, as I try my hardest to get their attention. Anyways, I prepared to carry on through these TVs. Slowing the game down and zooming in as we make our way through these TVs, we'll be able to get a closer look at the images that flashed on the screen while doing so. From what I gathered, it's multiple images of instances Mono and Six have gone through, including shots of the two of them, the Thin Man, the signal tower, and the TV people too. This spits us over into the window though, where we encounter the TV person that we end up electrocuting. Zooming out, we'll see the big open area we just went through is now unloaded. But it's time to end this fool that's clearly struggling with this door. I realized I haven't tried the Ant-Man approach with the TV people yet, so I went ahead and became a tiny Mono. Unsurprisingly, this ends up not working, as he comes up and blasts us with his sonic waves, which can't be seen here due to the view mode I'm currently in. Messing around here, this is when I discovered a duplicate model of the TV person up in the ceiling, laying there in his deceased position. I try going up there to see if anything occurs, which ends up being uneventful though. So with that, I went ahead and shocked this guy as I observed the duplicate up above, with no apparent interaction between the two. Perhaps this copy is used to replace the one down below after the animation is finished, or is used when a save is reloaded, and the game needs to keep this guy in a dead state. Getting a closer look as we give Mono a death by electrocution, we'll see sparks pop off him as he eventually falls over. I was hoping for some wild physics to take place, like with Mono's previous slow motion deaths, but that wasn't the case here. We've now cleared the way for Mono to carry on as normal though, so let's go ahead and push on. Pressing forward, we'll come to another TV puzzle which involves traveling between multiple floors. Going down this chute, we'll unclog it as we fall into a bunch of debris. There's a suitcase in here though that we'll want to open up, as there's a package within that we're going to bring with us. With this postal hat on, if you approach this door on the opposite end of the room, some hands will be present as they'll take the package from us. This unlocks the achievement Post-Industrial. Carrying on, we'll want to access this elevator and take it up. Once doing so, we'll send it back down as we go through the TV quickly, allowing us to jump on top of the elevator, hence accessing this room where we'll continue on. This will lead us into a bathroom where we basically have to perform another execution by electrocution as we turn this TV off and lure the TV person over to the bathroom where the deed is done. Now we can grab this stool, allowing us to open this door that leads outside to a rather creepy sight. There's a good amount of TV people here in this alley, but luckily the TV has their attention. Carrying on, we're at another puzzle that requires this shopping cart. If we bring it over here first, we can make our way up and grab another collectible hat, being what I believe is the last obtainable hat of this chapter. We'll want to shove the cart down into the water though, allowing us to avoid an electrifying death. Not quite being able to reach the lever to shut off the power, we'll make our way into this next room where we can find a way up and out to the lever. Once shutting the power off, we can then move the cart over to this area where we'll need it. After turning the power on, of course, as the TV can't turn on otherwise. Doing all of this allows us to escape and move on from this area though. Jumping up and out of this window, we'll see a bunch of TV people lingering about. Turning this TV on and this one off will allow us to proceed forward. However, it also triggers a frantic chase, as we've upset these viewers. Staying mobile, we'll want to make our way through the store, which leads us to a TV that we must go through quickly, before getting devoured by our faceless friends. We're now safe, temporarily of course, so let's go back and take another look at all of this from behind the scenes. So zooming out, we can get a look at this elevator puzzle area we had just gone through, which leads us to taking a closer look at the male recipient, being a pair of legs and hands, with one leg appearing to be broken. Not much is known about this slender-looking individual though. One theory is that they are not heavily afflicted by the televisions of the Pale City as the TV people are, and are instead focused on their duties within the mailroom. Similarly to how residents like the doctor and the teacher are primarily occupied within their own facilities. Regardless, this seems to be an overall sad job, if I say so myself. We can see once they take the package, it'll soon disappear as it leaves the player's normal view. I continued on with my out-of-bounds exploration throughout this particular area though, with not much else going on. Pushing forward into this bathroom scene, if we zoom out, we'll see the present layout that is loaded in, with the alleyway just up ahead. So I make quick work of this particular viewer and head outside. Having this different view, we can actually get a better look at this TV that all these TV people are gazing at. Normally, it's so bright, as you cannot see the screen, and getting too close is fatal. Oops. However, most of you familiar with the game may recognize what they're observing on the screen, as it's an area within the signal tower, which we will eventually venture through once reaching the final chapter of this game. Anyways, I warp past the shopping cart because nothing interesting happens here. We've now reached a bunch of these viewers though, in which we'll be running from in a few moments. First, I took a closer look back here, as there are quite a few of these viewers out here. Warping mono back here shows that they are dormant and will not attack us. Being back here ended up causing the two up by the TV to disappear though, so I went ahead and came back as I destroyed the fence. Sadly, this doesn't change anything other than our view of them. This prompted me to take out the glass and make my way into the shop instead of using the TV, which gave me the impression that I could walk through here freely. With that said, it sorta works, as there are only two viewers trying to pursue me, who can't seem to make their way inside. So I make my way into the next room, where to my surprise, I'm ambushed, as they immediately take me out. Doing this sequence again, some of them end up being able to make it inside, but I keep my distance with teleportation, which reveals why I died so quickly before. Once entering the next area, you'll see that they'll unload and reload back in, being that much closer. In a similar fashion, I warp further into this chase, as we can see that they'll once again unload and reload back in for the next portion of the chase. In an attempt to further break this chase, I warped up into the ceiling, resulting with them standing around in confusion. Seeing this, curiosity led me to warping back to the beginning of this chase to see what happens. I thought they'd do a 180 and come back for me, but to my surprise, they were all back outside, with the whole store being vacant, as you can see. So I proceeded to casually walk through the store with zero worries. Mistakes were made though, as I didn't anticipate the shelf that I knocked over during the chase having a death barrier in it, which killed me as soon as I entered it. Coming back, I tried to see if simply being up here would be safe as the chase took place, which resulted with this TV person coming up and scoping me from below with its sonic waves. Glorious. It was fun while it lasted, but it is time to move on though. Going through this TV, we can see that it teleports us quite far from where we were, making for quite the jump in distance. But let's move on to the next section now. So moving on leads us to another TV encounter. 6 will appear on the screen as she's trapped and trying to break out. Interacting with her, Mono will attempt to pull her out, but it doesn't last long, because the Thin Man ends up grabbing her and ripping her out of our grasp. He then comes for us. We need to grab this axe and break this door. Escaping this static nightmare, we'll find ourselves being stalked by him as we creep our way through this area. This will lead us to a stool we need to use to get out a window. As we're doing this, you'll see the Thin Man is horrifically approaching us in the background as he glitches his way through the hall. Escaping, we'll find ourselves sliding down into an abandoned train cart where we'll have temporary safety. This doesn't last long though, because when we jump into this following cart, we'll have the Thin Man hot on our tail as we once again run for our life. With patience and accurate jumps, we'll venture through this train with no room for mistakes. We'll make it to this lever and pull it, detaching the carts as we make our escape. This follows with an intense train ride that eventually ends with a hard crash that honestly should have killed Mono. Disoriented, Mono will get up and we'll want to backtrack. We'll come across more glitching remains of 6 as we'll want to follow her. It's fair to speculate at this point that all the glitching remains we've collected throughout this game were definitely snatched up by the Thin Man. This will lead us up and out onto the street where we'll have this intense final encounter with the Thin Man. It turns into a duel in which we'll need to fight off the Thin Man's attempts at grabbing us. After successfully doing this a few times, the Thin Man will succumb to our attacks as he eventually disintegrates into the air. After defeating him, it's as if Mono has developed abilities beyond comprehension. He pulls a signal tower towards himself, making for a pretty wild scene. A door to the tower will open with a pink glow within as we proceed forward, with the chapter concluding. So back where we observe 6 trapped in the TV, if we change the view, we can get a better look at 6 during this scene. The Thin Man can be found behind her, who is almost contorted into a ball, with his legs clipping through the floor. His ankles appear to be in great pain, as we can see they're all twisted up. Overall, it just doesn't look like a pleasant time for the Thin Man. We can watch when he pulls 6 through the TV, as both him and 6 disappear within. However, another model of the Thin Man will spawn in with his head cut off, as his legs dangle through the floor as well. It's fair to speculate that they masked the model here near the top of the TV so that the player wouldn't see the Thin Man's head poking out the top. It sort of glitched out for me here in slow motion, but he basically comes out as he has in the previous TV scenes. Deciding to play games with him, I warped back from where we came to see how he'd react. He simply clips through the door we normally would have went through, continuing his pursuit as he comes to a stop walking in place. Coming back and going into this room with him, the door gave me a minor jump scare, realizing it's triggered by Mono's position, and not the Thin Man. My way is blocked though, so I warped by him and moved on, as he remained walking in place here. Normally, he'll disappear right here. We can't find him up here though, waiting for us to progress. He looks so peaceful. Typically he'll walk around up here and just disappear, as he'll reappear when looking down in the floor. I brought Mono up here to see if he'd react, but he didn't, as he continued his patrol through this room. However, after reappearing, if we get too close, whether we're up here or down below, it's lights out for Mono. The following area where he comes for us down this hall, we can see him menacingly waiting behind the door. It's almost as if he knows exactly what we're going to do, like he's done this before. Hint hint, nudge nudge. Warping back here though, we can trick him as he once again ends up walking in place. He clearly knows where we are though, as you can see. In another instance, I warped up to the window instead of using the stool, making for a quicker escape. But because I did this, he reacts just as quickly, as he streams down the hall once I tear off this board. He will disappear here as we progress, but we can once again find him waiting in the train, where he'll end up pursuing us again. Zooming out, we can get an overall view of this whole area. However, it's time to mess around with this dreaded old man once more. So as he began to chase me, I got behind him again, to see if he perhaps would wise up to my antics. We can see that he's trying to look at us, but continues his walk anyway. Clipping through a train door and approaching the part where we'd normally detach the train, he pulls a fast one as he glitches his way back to where I am, ultimately taking me out. Clearly, he isn't playing around anymore. However, I did end up warping ahead to get a jump on him as I detached the train cart with him being way behind, as you can see. This doesn't really affect the outcome of this instance though. In another attempt, I just skipped the whole train sequence itself. Warping over here, I found myself being able to continue on as normal, but as soon as I climbed up here, Mono went into his hurt state as he began limping. When you usually take the train and all that, we can see the Thin Man will just turn around and stand in this doorway indefinitely. Warping back here, he'll just continue to stand here, as we can roam freely. It's now time for us to make our way up to the final fight scene though. Moving the camera once we get up here, we can see that there's another signal tower to the left. This fight scene is intense though, which happens to be one of my favorite points in the game. However, not much occurs here outside of what we typically see, so we'll go ahead and blast this fool from existence. Now, this part, where we end up pulling the signal tower towards us, is pretty neat though. Zooming out and watching this from this perspective, we can see how the signal tower and all the buildings will come at us, with some of the buildings squishing together almost like an accordion. The buildings appear to be all grouped together and are getting scaled as a group, while the ends of the city accordion retain their shape. I suppose they could be scaling up individually as the whole package is scaled down. But with that, Hatless Mono has survived the Thin Man, and that is everything I found behind the scenes of Chapter 4, The Pale City. Our adventure draws closer to an end as we press on into Chapter 5, The Signal Tower, and enter this ominous door. Starting off, we'll run down this oh-so-familiar hall where we'd expect to see the Thin Man waiting behind this door. However, like I said, he's currently out of the picture, and instead, we'll find ourselves in this trippy dreamscape-like building that has a lot of doors, as random objects can be seen floating about. Approaching this door will end with it shutting on Mono, as this door to the left opens. Walking through the doorway will intensely warp us up above where we just were. Mono is going to get his steps in today, as we make our way up these stairs, warping into a completely different area. This is going to be a repeating theme, as we're going to want to follow the sound of the music that's being played, essentially identifying the correct doorway we must take in order to proceed. I can't help but reflect on how cool this entire sequence is overall, with the aura of it, music, and so on. There are slight obstacles we'll encounter while traversing through these doorways, like this door we'll need to open from one side and run through the other, along with this particular hallway where we need to push down a board before seeking out the doorways in which the music is coming from. In the totality of it all, we'll find ourselves heading up a final set of stairs, which leads us to, well, the source of the music. Let's rewind here though, and take another look at everything we had just gone through. From where we began, if we go ahead and zoom out, we'll see the entirety of what's currently loaded in, with the door and stairs room standing out the most. It's pretty interesting to check out, as we'll also be able to see the next area in which we'll be heading to, once taking that door that opens for us. I did happen to find a random wagon that was floating in place out of bounds, with not much else taking place though. It was very fascinating to get an overall look at this main area, as we can see it goes quite a ways up. Needless to say, it's probably a good thing that Mono is unable to look down while making this climb. That is, of course, if heights is on his list of nightmares. I tried getting Mono onto some of these floating objects within here, but quickly realized that they have no collision. Therefore, nothing for Mono to warp onto. Trying to get onto the lips of these doorways was also a bust, as Mono simply slid right off of them and fell to his death, making for a glorious F in the chat. Looking through the door that leads out of this area, we'll see it actually doesn't lead to anywhere though. This is something we can barely see in normal gameplay, but once approaching the door, if we stand here and go off camera, we can actually find another copy of Mono, which is where we end up going once we walk through the doorway. This is pretty cool to see how it's done. Doing it this way, I would speculate that it allows for a smooth transition that takes place as we go through the warp. I wanted to try and go into the room that shuts as we initially enter this big area though. So I warped in there before the door could shut, and as you can see, we can walk around in here. However, as soon as I tried to leave the room, I hit an invisible barrier, and then the door ended up shutting on me, trapping Mono within. Moving on, we'll come up this first set of stairs, where if we stop at the doorway here, we'll once again see how Mono is technically in two places at once, as the second awaits for the player to walk through. I tried warping over to this hallway where the other Mono was, which ended up having no collision though, as I fell into the void. Oops. We can, however, warp Mono to one of the higher staircases we end up taking, allowing us to essentially skip this entire area. Only wanting to see if it worked, I plunged off the stairs to reset the instance. Pushing forward, we're going to run to a lot more of these instances where we'll see multiples of Mono, as the main area will practically unload while traversing these halls. So I continued on, as we of course have to follow the music, because if we don't, you'll see the game's waiting to warp us back for choosing the wrong path. Progressing, we'll see the main area loads back in, as we continue our exploration for anything that may catch our eye. Unfortunately, this is a very repetitive section as we slowly climb up the stairs. I did decide to give Mono a mushroom power-up at one point to see how the game would react to Big Boy Mono. You'll see I can't even push down the board here, which is due to my size. However, the game is not a fan of Mono being big as we traverse through the doors. I'm not sure what happened, but while doing this, the game just sort of deleted me as the death music queued up and restarted the instance. It was cool to check out this picture in the hall though, as it's a taste of things to come, being a picture of Six in her monstrous form. With that said, let's carry on with the next section. Speaking of Six and the horrific form she's taken, this is where we'll first encounter her. As you can see, Six isn't doing so hot, being much larger than normal and contorted. Yelling to her will get her to come towards us, as she'll then sit in the middle of the room. This will then allow us to grab the conveniently placed sledgehammer that she was on top of, as we take a big swing at the music box. This ultimately blasts Mono into a dark area where we will temporarily see him sitting, as he'll eventually come to being snapped back into the room where Six is. The room is now falling apart from the blast though, and we need to run. Six will then begin horrifically chasing us, as we'll need to use a door portal to keep ahead of her. Narrowly escaping her, we'll make our way into this next room where, well, she isn't letting up, as she'll make her way in, entering from the background. Frustratingly unable to find us, she'll then exit the room to continue her search for us. After taking the portal doorway, we'll see her pushing forward, as we'll want to avoid following her. So we'll get this axe and break the door, only to find ourselves face to face with her once again though. We're now tasked with having to hit the music box again. Doing this, we'll have to distract her with shouts, as we utilize the door portals. Hitting the music box this time brings us back to this empty dark area, where we were briefly just a little bit ago. Coming to, we'll eventually encounter a door with an axe in it. As you may have guessed, this is where we need to go, as it will bring us back for another round with Six. Doing the same thing as last time, we'll distract her and strike the music box once it's unprotected. Deja vu sets in as we're back here again, where we'll have to find the door with the axe again, which yes, brings us back to Six for round 3. The layout slightly changes, but we basically have to do the same thing to progress. This final strike we make on the music box will follow with Mono eventually coming to, as the room is now in ruins and Six has, well, she's seen better days. Retrieving the axe once again, we'll shout at her to clear the way as we strike the music box. It appears something is working as we do this, given that Six has visibly gotten smaller. One last strike to the box would darken the room though, as we'll eventually see that Six is back to her normal form now. We're about to endure the collapse of this place, but with all that back and forth, let's now go back and see how this all transpires from another perspective. Zooming out, once we first encounter Six, we'll be able to see the layout during this part, with there being a large area above us. We will come back to this area shortly. Coming back down here, we'll be able to see some text that's above our current location. We can see some pictures in the background as well, which are curious and may tell a story in themselves, but I honestly couldn't help creeping myself out as I got a closer look at these dolls that are in here. Gloriously terrifying. However, this text above the room that I mentioned before reads, "Room is now 200 units shorter, but not the warped room. It should be shorter too. But animations needs to be updated on 6 also then." We've seen texts like this before in previous chapters, which are basically instructions left over for other game designers. We normally don't get a good look at Six's face while she's in this monstrous form, so getting a closer look at her, we'll see that she in fact doesn't have a face. It's just a blank slate with a bunch of hair coming out of it. This of course makes sense. Why put the work in to create a face for this model when no one's ever gonna see it? Anyway, getting an overall look at Six, I sort of can't blame her for the decisions she ends up making throughout the rest of this chapter, given the amount of pain she must be enduring. Once we hit the music box for the first time though, a lot takes place here. As the area we came from unloads, we'll see another area loaded in for the next sequence of events, along with another model of Six. This is occurring while we're normally observing the large dark open area. Coming back down to where we initially hit the music box though, we'll find this particular model of Six is all twisted up and knocked out, as she's clipping through the back wall. Normally at this point, we'll warp back to where we'll need to begin running from this other model of Six. If we zoom out and come back to the original Six we encountered though, we'll see that she snaps back to her music box, as she'll then just linger here. Thinking I froze time, it turns out I was actually running the game fairly slowly. So when I came back to check out Mono, well, he got slapped by Six, real hard. Just look at him go. I guess this is Six's way of getting back at us, seeing as Mono is semi-responsible for her mutation. But I digress. In short, we're actually dealing with 2 Sixes during this entire encounter. At least, that's what I thought. until I came down here only to discover a third model of 6 laying dormant. I want to say this is a model that comes into play when she's chasing us, but I was never able to see that transpire, so I can only speculate. We can also find the music box down here floating on its side as it's visibly playing, which is curious. However, teleporting back down to the initial 6 we encounter shows that she's completely inactive, as I'm able to wander about this room with no real danger. Although, I was more interested to see how the 6 that ends up chasing us reacts when I warp behind her during the chase. Right as I got behind her, you'll see her legs stretch as she pushes on with the chase. She'll progress normally, but once she gets to here, where we normally lose sight of her, we can see her show off her skills in contortion. She'll begin to clip through the wall as she twists within it. This follows with some more stretching of her model, which could explain her constant screams of pain. Joking aside, the model then quickly slide back through another wall where she'll hold her position. This may not normally occur this way, seeing as we warped behind her during the chase, but I'm not entirely sure. Unaware of where it came from, I found another model of 6 hanging out in this hall we normally run through, so I took back control of Mono to investigate. Getting over here as a player, you can clearly see it's an odd sight, as she'll just remain here until we progress. We can't be harmed either. Jumping into the next room though, you'll see that there's yet again another 6 up ahead, and the one behind us ends up unloading. With that happening, the contorted model back behind the wall will then make her entrance through the background. It's pretty wild to see how all this transpires. Once she's done looking for us though, she'll do this creepy slide through the hall and into the next area, where she'll eventually unload. The other 6 will then activate and start going down the hall and into the doorway, where she'll freeze momentarily as she waits for the player to progress. When she does go into this room though, she'll just freeze into position, where she'll remain alongside a music box. Zooming out, we'll see that the next room is already loaded in, but 6 is not. It's only until we break through this door that she'll load in here, which, if you are wondering, is another model of 6, as the other is still frozen up here. Getting in here though, we'll once again see how there are doubles of Mono to make this illusion with the door work. It's cool to see how this very same technique is used for 6 as well, when she attempts to attack us, reinforcing the optical illusion overall. Before taking out the music box though, if we zoom out, we'll see how the large room up above is loaded back in, where we're about to head to. So I went ahead and struck the music box, and as you can see, Mono will clip through the floor as it breaks, with 6 disappearing shortly after. This then triggers the next 6 encounter to load in right above where we just were. If we come over here though, this is where Mono is warped to. This area is especially interesting to see how it works. You can see how when the player walks about, the level will generate accordingly as they move. Our visibility is normally obstructed by darkness, which in turn creates another optical illusion, leading us to believe we keep running into the same door as we traverse through this area. Grabbing the axe, you'll see that it's synced up with the other axes as they fall out to the door. Even with picking up the axe, you'll see that we also pick up the other ones as well. Overall, having this view makes this section an even more trippy fever dream. However, coming back to 6 and striking your music box again basically transpires the same as it did before. Except this time, the doors in this big area are now floating above the ground. At first, I wasn't entirely sure why this was the case. Speculating though, I believe they did this so the player could walk around a bit longer before ultimately finding the door, as we'll see how they come down once we walk around for a bit. You'll also see how the next area we warp to is now loaded in. The axe we use here can be found right out in front of the area on top of a white box. This item will swap into gameplay as we grab the axe like so, given that it's no longer on the white box once grabbing it. The normal size 6 can also be found laying in here, along with a bigger one laying in the background, within the goop. It's clearly just not 6's day. Hitting the music box in here is interesting though. Slow motion causes it to flail around in a weird manner, but watching the background, we can see how the transition takes place as 6 gets smaller once we hit the box. The smaller model will simply load in, as we'd usually not see this during normal gameplay. The bigger 6 will shrink down a little as it eventually disappears. Taking a closer look at the mid-size 6, we can see that she has her face again. So I can only imagine she feels a little better, right? However, as soon as we hit the music box for the final time, that model will unload as the normal size 6 loads in. Not gonna lie, I lost track of how many 6s we just encountered through this portion, so with that, let's continue on to the next section. So we've just freed 6 from her horrific monstrous state, and now it's time to run. The eye monster, or entity, will begin chasing us. It's nothing confirmed, but to my understanding, this is the signal tower's true form. as it grows by consuming viewers through the transmission. It would explain all the clothes that can be seen as we play through. Anyway, this entity chases us into a big area where there's a long bridge we must cross. Losing our footing, 6 will get ahead of us, as we can see the bridge is crumbling beneath our feet. Leaping towards 6, she'll grab us, as Mono dangles in the air. Unfortunately for Mono, 6 decides to let go of us. Watching Mono fall, I was in disbelief during my first playthrough of this. We can see 6 will make her escape though as the screen fades to black. Coming to, we'll see that Mono is still alive, but now alone, on the surface of this eye monster. Wandering around a bit, we'll eventually find a mound of flesh that has a chair on the peak of it. At this point, it appears that the most obvious thing to do is to sit in the chair. After doing so, we'll be met with this creepy, claustrophobic cutscene, as we're now able to see that Mono is surrounded by this eye entity. The walls of this creature will slowly close in, to the point where it nearly engulfs Mono. Instead, though, we end up in an empty room, but still on the chair. I won't pretend that I know what exactly happened here, but I must say this scene was quite the reveal when first playing through. Mono depressingly sits in the chair over a long period of time. With absolutely no choice, Mono grows up to become none other than the Thin Man, where he'll patiently wait to encounter his young self with 6, essentially being a time loop of some sort. Another scene occurs, where we'll see 6 jump out of the TV. A glitching remain of herself will then appear, as it looks over at the piece of paper, which foreshadows 6's adventure that takes place in the first game. It'll then disappear, as 6's stomach gurgles, with the credits rolling shortly after. It's now time to take a final look at everything we just endured. So we'll see when the eye monster is chasing us, that we can do the same thing we did with Monstrous 6, as I warp behind it during this chase. Leaving 6 to fend for herself, I begin following this flesh wall. However, 6 somehow shows up behind me as well. She eventually stops following, as I could only assume it's because we're not supposed to be back here. Coming to a stop, it appeared that I may have soft-locked the game, as there's nothing else loaded in ahead of the eye monster. It didn't last long though, because as soon as I took back control of Mono, I was immediately killed, hence restarting the chase. So I ran through the chase this time, but as soon as I got to the doorway that leads to the bridge area, I decided to break off and pull a fast one on 6. I ended up warping to the other side of the bridge to safety, where I'm in fact able to walk about. However, the progression of the game halts, and if we look over here, we can find that 6 is in a T-pose, as she floats in this position indefinitely. Who's getting left behind now, sucker? Time to do exactly what 6 did to us, and ditch her, as we leave this nightmare now. Unfortunately, and as you may have guessed, that's not how this works, as we enter this white and blue room for a brief moment, which ends abruptly, as I fall to my death. Unglorious. Trying to warp over here as make the jump doesn't work sadly, so unfortunately, we're going to have to watch Mono get betrayed once again. Truly, a heartbreaking moment for our boy Mono. I lost track of him when he fell through. However, we can watch 6 make her escape as she goes into the blue and white room. She'll eventually come to a stop within here, and will freeze in place indefinitely. Coming down here though, we'll find the big flesh area that Mono ends up in, which is where he is at this moment. We can also see next to it is the area in which we observe the whole growing old scene. We will get back to this place in a moment though. This eyeball monster area has similar functions as the door area we encountered before, except the mound of flesh with the chair that we eventually find is actually under the map at this moment. I tried getting Mono down here to see if the game would react in any way, but as you can see, it's difficult to navigate. I did manage to get him in the chair, but nothing occurs when doing this. Walking through this fleshy area, we can see how the walls in the background will get closer as we progress. Eventually the mound with the chair will be transferred from below to the surface of this room. I went back down below to confirm the mound and chair were gone, and found a single eyeball down here just chilling in the void. However, once we get into the chair, we can get a better look at how this whole area consumes the space around Mono, as it closes in slowly but surely. This is when Mono is warped to the room with the chair, which I apologize in advance because the game started lagging a bit here, as I had trouble accessing the camera. After sorting it out, I came back to the monster area where we can find the chair we were initially in all by its lonesome, surrounded by these creepy eyeballs. It's now time to get a better look at Mono's age progression though. Seeing as the game usually fades to black while he grows up, we'll see that the model simply changes in an instant. Getting a closer look, we can see his age hasn't changed much, but clearly he's bigger. We can also find the original Mono stored underneath this area as it plays out, which is the only model that's placed here, as the others vanish once they leave the chair room. You'll see the chair gets bigger as well when Mono does. I have to say though, this particular model of his age progression made me uneasy. He's clearly bigger, but seeing his face, which we normally can't, makes him appear as an old baby man. You can clearly see that he's been through the grinder, and that he's seen some stuff. The next transition is more familiar, as he's becoming older, and looking much more like the terrifying Thin Man. I'm curious as to where he found a comb for his hair, or even the clothes, now that I think about it. Perhaps the eye entity is giving him the clothes, which belong to the viewers that it has been consuming. Definitely food for thought. In Frieza fashion, he'll get to his final form, as the room around him gets smaller as well. What a miserable life this must have been. No wonder he wants to destroy 6. Moving on to the last area before the credits, we'll actually find that Mono is here as well. We can see how 6 is standing by as her model waits behind the TV. This room wasn't accessible with Mono due to the extreme lag I was experiencing, but I did manage to break the sequence of this whole part though. I tried warping to the chair before triggering it in the eye room, which resulted with the cutscene activating. I was able to move for a brief moment, but eventually lost control as the scene played out. When I tried warping into the room with 6, in short, I died, which caused the game to reset me back to the last checkpoint as the credits rolled. This was my sign that we've reached the end. And with that, we've completed this Out of Bounds journey throughout the entirety of Little Nightmares 2, thus completing our deep dive in both games. I do hope you all enjoyed this. Once Little Nightmares 3 is done with all its DLC, I'll probably do the same there. Cheers!